Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Susie Horton, and I am the Chair of the Planning Committee. Before we go on to introductions, just a little bit of housekeeping and safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells and don't use the lifts. You've probably noticed that the Comic-Con setup is in full flow, so we won't be able to meet by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. Instead, it will be the alternative location, which is King Henry Street. As you come out past the university building, turn right. If you did sign in, please sign out for the Guildhall. The meeting is live web streamed and to allow the public to watch remotely if they want. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera except for those people on the right hand side in the back 2 rows, I believe. Please can everyone speaking use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they've finished. And the setup here is that you don't have to hold the button down. You can just press it and release it and then do the same when you finish for those who haven't used it before. Just a bit for the committee on voting. When voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated, and I'll do for, against or abstention. Okay, that's the end of the housekeeping. Some introductions I'm going to do in 3 parts. I'm going to start with committee members. So I'm going to start to my right.
Morning, Chair. Councillor Joe Standham, Paulsgrove Ward.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell.
Morning, Chair. Mary Vallely, Cosham and Mummering.
Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward, Vice Chair of this committee.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
Technical issues. Good morning, Chair. Councillor Lee Hunt. So I also cover Stamshill, Tipner, Buckland and North End, otherwise known as Nelson Ward. Thank you.
Welcome to the committee. Now I'm going to go around the room. I know some people are here just to attend and observers, and you're all welcome, but I just want people to introduce themselves if they're going to be doing a deputation. So I'm going to start to the right here.
Hello, my name's Sarah Walsh and I'm doing an objection.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name's Simon Hill and I am the applicant for 77 North End Avenue.
Okay.
Councillor Jason Fazackley, Nelson Ward, opposing 77 North End Avenue.
I'm going to go to the middle bit here.
Good morning, Chris Gilder, Project Manager, here to speak for Pumping the Community, Moneyfield Stadium.
Okay.
And Claire Martin, I'm speaking for the development at Moneyfield as well.
Morning, Chair. Richard Adair, Councillor for Nelson Ward, speaking on 77 North End Avenue.
And to the back row.
Hello, Paul Ganena. I'm here for South Sea Skate Park.
I'm Paul Cashin here for South Sea Skate Park as well.
Okay.
Darryl Howells for Great South Sea Street.
A member of the staff who's doing work experience with us this week observing. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to all of you doing deputations and everyone else who's watching. And finally,
Councillor Madrick's running 5 minutes late. He'll be here in a moment.
Okay, thank you. And finally, the officers. I'll start to my right so I don't forget her this time.
Good morning, I'm Juliet Gill, I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor. I'm here to advise the members and the officers.
Good morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Good morning, I'm Simon Turner. I'm a team leader in the Planning Department.
I'm Jane Dodino, the Local Democracy Officer.
Welcome to everyone. Is there anybody who will be speaking or needs to introduce themselves that I've missed out? Don't think so. Yes.
Chair, I note Councillor Lee Hunt is listed on the deputations. I'm wondering if that is in error.
As before. Yes.
Yeah.
I never asked to make deputation.
Okay.
It's happened before, hasn't it?
Okay. I don't remember, but if you
Yes,
say
it's
so.
happened before.
Okay.
Two meetings
All right, we
back.
will take you off. That's great. That's one less deputation on that. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, next item is apologies for absence. We've obviously got apologies for lateness from Councillor Madgwick. We also have apologies for Councillor Cordy. Are there any other apologies that anyone knows of? No. Okay, next item, item 7, declarations of interest. Councillor Valley.
I just need to say that Paul is my neighbour. I didn't expect to see him here today, so.
So that's personal, non-prejudicial. Okay, excellent. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Hunt.
Two. So I do know Mr. Simon Hill through my son's business, but it's personal, non-prejudicial. And also, obviously, I know Claire Martin and Chris Gilder over many years of contact through the City Council.
Sorry, can I just check? With Councillor Mary Vallely, we decided that it wasn't an interest, she was just making a voluntary declaration. Councillor Lee Hunt, is yours a personal and prejudicial interest, or just are you just making a voluntary declaration?
A voluntary declaration.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Madgwick, welcome to the meeting. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Councillor Magic from the Portsmouth Ward. Apologies for being slightly late, Chair.
Thank you. You haven't missed any of the substantive items, so you'll be able to vote on the first one. I believe then that takes us to the first...
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Can I just check if Councillor Madgwick has any declarations of interest?
No interest.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, I think that's the admin done, introductions and admin done. Okay, just for those people who may not have been here before around the procedures, the officers will present the reports. Then we will go to deputations. After the deputations, there will be an opportunity for the committee only to ask questions of the officers, maybe for clarification. After that, there will be opportunities for the committee to make comments and or proposals about whether they wish to support the officers' recommendations or not. So that is the procedure for each one. I've just noticed that Councillor Leonie Oliver has arrived. You're doing a deputation, yes? Do you want to introduce yourself? Although I've probably done that inadvertently.
Councillor Leonie Oliver for Baffins Ward. Thanks.
Welcome to the meeting. Okay, so the first substantive item that we're looking at is Southsea Skate Park, which is agenda item 4. So I believe...
should we not
Chair,
be doing
you
the
need to agree
minutes?
the minutes.
Yes, the last administrative thing is, yes, you're absolutely right. The minutes from the last meeting, planning committee meeting, they were sent round. Thank you, Councillor Smythe. I've read them. I think they're accurate. To the committee, the people at the committee who are here agree with me that they're accurate. Yes, I think we're all in agreed. Thank you very much for reminding me. Okay, now we will go on to the first item, which is Southsea Skate Park, and I believe it's David who's presenting. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is an application for development at the Southsea Skate Park, a construction enclosure on the existing steel circuit with new entrance cafe, toilets and educational and training space and viewing areas. So this is the site here, as you see on the left, on Southsea Common, with the red line round and the access point there. See sites a collection, as you can see, of ramps, etc., and buildings that have developed over time. So this is how the current set out is arranged, and you can see listed there the various features within the skate park. Principally, the development will take place up in this northern part over here, which is described as the street circuit, and over this the site of the bandstand, which is number 7 here at the top. As part of that, the scheme will provide facilities that are also currently within these buildings here, and these buildings will be kept and then revamped for improved toilet facilities. So you get a flavour for the site as it is here, and the building will be located in this part of the site here, so it's not covering the whole of the skate park. The purpose of it is to provide an all-weather facility for the skate park, which will allow year-round use, and also improve facilities for visitors and users. So whilst you can see from here, from just on the common, an eclectic range of buildings that make up the site, as you go into sort of further views away from the adjoining roads, it's more discreet as a result of the intervening trees, hedges and other buildings. A key issue for members today is the number of heritage assets in close proximity to the site. So we've highlighted the main ones there. So the whole of the Southsea Common is a listed garden. We've got the Southsea Castle scheduled monument and the listed lighthouse here. Also the Grade 1 listed memorial up here as well. And the local D-Day list, which is locally listed as well. So clearly sensitive site in carrying out any development on the site, but also noting the fact that many of the structures are slightly incongruous to the more open nature of the common currently. Another factor with the site is the potential for flood risk. So at the moment, it largely lies outside of any area of flood risk, despite its proximity to the coast. But going forward, it will, over time, be vulnerable to a flood event, a tidal flood event, particularly with climate change, that level is fairly high. So you'll notice from the SMAT that additional information has been provided about the potential impacts long term. So whilst the scheme is not currently at flood risk, going into the future it will go into an area of flood risk. And as a result of that, there are various measures proposed in the updated flood risk assessment which will deal with those matters, principally around the ability to evacuate the site in a flood event so that people on the site aren't put at risk in the worst case scenario envisaged on the right there. Another key constraint are trees within the site. As you've seen from the photos, that's a key aspect of the character of the area. So the scheme does not require removal of any of the trees. The nature of the building works in here mean that it does encroach onto the root protection zones of 2 of the trees adjoining the site. Those trees can be retained. Your arborist officer is satisfied that that incursion into the RPZ of these particular trees is something that they can tolerate and will survive. And so there's no need to remove those trees, and moreover, the building shouldn't jeopardise their long-term retention. And just for clarity, because the colours are not great on this, those are 3 Cat B trees, category B trees, and then the nearest category A tree is this one here, which is not affected by the works. So here's the existing layout. You can see a series of features and the grandstand on the site. And the proposals are, in effect, to construct a building over this area here. So this will provide a dual height space in the middle with a single-storey height space here for lower features. And in addition, cafe space and viewing area also provided. In terms of how that will look, so the development has been subject to pre-application advice from officers. You'll see better when we get to the CGIs. The sort of twin approach, so we've got a brick feature at ground level with these repeating arches, very much picking up on the naval history that you'll see within the city, and then the taller middle section with the dual height section with a copper-coloured profiled sheeting. You can see, obviously, that there's a significant increase in mass and bulk as a result. That's balanced with replacing and hiding some of the existing structures on the site as well, with a coherent form and building. So viewing this from the south, so with you back to Southsea Castle here, you can see there's a significant increase with the dual height section of the building, but most of the single story is similar to the existing height of the structures there. Moving around from the west, again, you're getting a similar flavour of the size and increase that you will get as a result of the scheme. And similarly, when looking from the east, this is where the entrance will be from now on, if it goes ahead and is approved. So the entrance will be from here. That gives you an idea of the full scope of the building and the design aspects that have been incorporated into it. Just in terms of that proposed floor plan, you get a bit of greater detail on there. These are taller and more difficult features. We're requiring the extra height proposed, and these are lower features. And then you've got a cafe on this side here. So this is showing you CGIs. This gives you, in some ways, a better impression of how the building will look, and the contrasting materials and how the design approach will work in the location that it has. And here's some views from the inside of how that space will work. So top left is the dual height space, and you can see why that additional height is needed in that particular area there. And then the bottom right is the lower level features, which will be in the single story area. And just finally, in terms of views, that gives you an axiometric of how the building will be laid out. In terms of the planning merits, so the scheme provides significant benefits as a community facility, improves the existing community facility, so there are significant benefits from that as employment during construction and also ongoing at the site as well. From our perspective, we needed to balance that against particular impacts to heritage assets within the vicinity of the site, and we're satisfied that we strike an acceptable balance between those factors, bearing in mind the distance to those particular heritage assets and the quality of the design, and what for us is an improvement over the, in effect, the eclectic appearance of the site with the very many features which have developed over time. In terms of, you've had the additional information in relation to flood risk with the SPAT. We are satisfied adequately protect users of the site going forward into the future and provides a way of ensuring their safety in the event of a future high-risk flood event. With those and the other benefits in the set out in the scheme, we're happy to recommend the application for approval, Chair.
Thank you, David. Before we go on to the deputations, I noticed that 2 other people have entered the meeting, so would you like to introduce yourselves, please?
I think you're referring to me as one of them. I'm Councillor Darren Sanders. I'm one of the councillors for the Baffins ward.
And the person next to you? Welcome to you both to the meeting. Okay, we'll now go on to the deputation. So the first deputation, you have up to 6 minutes. It's Paul Ganella, who is the applicant. Unless you want to swap the order with Paul, the other Paul. Do you want to go first?
Yes, please,
Yeah,
if that's okay.
So 6 minutes for your deputation.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Cashin. I'm the agent and architect for the proposals at the skate park. I think the planning officer presented the scheme very well, and most of the things I was going to talk about have already been covered but I think I'd give you a bit more of a background as to the project to date. I was asked by the trustees of the skate park, which is a charity, in 2019 to work on this project. We've had 3 pre-applications, I think, since then, and this is the first full planning application. It's been a project that started off merely as a roof, a simple proposition, but it's grown in ambition and scale to what we have today. I think the concerns from the conservation officer are reasonable, but hopefully the public benefit will outweigh any concerns of the impact on the heritage assets. I think any proposition on Southsea Common will impact heritage assets. It's an open park. It's very difficult to propose any building that doesn't affect the landscape of the history of the site. So hopefully we've struck a good balance of building mass, the appropriate materials, and the right concept for the project. I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up from members. Would you like to say something?
Thanks, Paul. I'm Paul as well. And so the charity that's been running, it's a volunteer-led charity that's been running the skate park for about 15 years. They took it over from council control. And one key element that I want to talk about is the impact the skate park has on the users. So we have a broad range of users who use the skate park from 8 or even younger, all the way up to my age, which is 50, all the way up to 60 plus. So it's a broad sort of 3 different sports, mainly skateboarding, scooter riding and BMX. The skate park is the oldest English non-privately run skate park. It was built in 1978. And the only one sort of really older is in Scotland. Many others have been built around that time period, but they were privately owned. But the skate park has a unique history in that it was a roller rink before that, going right back to the 1950s, and had famously European-winning figure skaters, European-winning speed skaters, and hockey team as well. So the heritage, I feel like we are a heritage site, to be quite honest with you, because I think the bandstand itself goes back to the 1920s. So what we're hoping to do is to really make a significant change to the users. Those users, particularly the ones that have shown real talent. We've got British champions, we've got European champions, and we've got a bronze Olympic medal winning alumni that come from the skate park. And that is as it is at the moment. We know that we have a brain drain with our talent, is that they have to leave to go and live in Corby in the Midlands at the moment, because that's the only facility that, with a roof, that can provide that level of a place for them to really achieve what they're capable of achieving. We've seen that with Declan, who was the Olympic medal winner, and we currently have an incredible scooter rider who's just won a huge competition in Germany, and he's in his early 20s, and he's really looking at where he will need to go for him to continue to improve and to become better. And that's not here at the moment, sadly, because of the weather. So it's not so much the facility. We've proven that we can support young talent and really show them the way, support them to where they want to go. You can come along and you can skate or ride and have no aspirations of winning any Olympic medals. But if that's something you want to do, we've been supportive in helping those people do that. And we want to continue doing that for the next generation of young people in Portsmouth. And it's worth remembering that many of these young riders are from areas with really difficult backgrounds. These sports are often very welcoming to people who maybe don't find their place within school or team sports, and they're looking for some positive outlet that's physical, builds resilience, confidence, builds up the ability to communicate with people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of ages, even disabilities as well. So I think the skate park, what we want to build, is going to be the one that's for the next 50 years, that's going to allow the best of talent within the city of Portsmouth and a bit further afield to really have a base that they can become the best sports person they possibly can be. And I think at the moment that's impossible with having to deal with the weather that we currently have. And I think it's probably best that, the sooner we can get that skate park, the better for that next level of talent coming through right at the moment. And I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And Paul. That brings us to the end of the deputation. So I'm going to go to the members of the committee now for questions first. Are there any questions about the application we have before us? Councillor Hugh Mason.
A couple of things. First one is the flood risk. You have mentioned the flood risk, that it is outside of flood zone C, but this is an area which will have a very high water table, and with rising sea level, the water table will be even higher. Is the ground capable of sustaining this weight of building? Has the effect of a very high water table been taken into consideration when considering the additional electricity and presumably sewerage which will be required for this building? I assume the sewerage is on the grid rather than by any other means. So the questions about that, about the flood risk, about the height of the water table, which I would like to have teased out. And my other question concerns the copper colour. Will this not, in the first instance, be very bright and very obtrusive?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in relation to the drainage aspect, so my understanding from the application form is that the site is on mains drain and main sewerage as existing. So that will continue as is. In terms of the structural issues, we'd expect those to be dealt with at the building regulations stage. Likewise, the scheme proposes sustainable drainage systems, and there's no reason why to believe those couldn't work, and the advantage of being within a larger open space. It's more challenging to do those on denser urban sites. So yes, we've got no reason to query that those aren't feasible at this stage, and they would be teased out at the final construction stage. In relation to the materials, just pop the presentation back up. Yes, it'd just be worth having a look at that. I appreciate where you're coming from, what you're saying. What I would say from my point of view, in terms of the copper colour and the green nature of it, we feel that's very sympathetic to the very sort of verdant, open character that you have on in the common, and then it will sit quite nicely in that. It also provides a very definite contrast to the brick on the bottom as well. It's a traditional building material, and will weather over time. So in terms of that, appreciate maybe initially stark, but in terms of its appearance over time, and also its general hue and the colour spectrum that it's sitting in, it'll sit quite nicely in that very sort of verdant open space, I feel.
Councillor Hunt is next, and then I'll come to you. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On that about the weight, I mean, I'm aware that a lot of the tricks there at the moment are actually concrete. So would I be right in assuming that the concrete all, well, you could see the concrete all comes out, and presumably lighter weight modules go in that will be moved around and so on. I don't know if you've got that kind of detail, but if that might help Councillor Mason a bit.
So we don't have that level of detail. The interior fit out is not something from planning that we'd be concerned with. That's the beauty, the flexibility that the operator will have is that they can change those ramps and features within the building without needing planning permission going forward.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And on the Portsmouth Society's view, that is a militaristic looking. I mean, when I look at this, I see elements of the hot walls, the arches, for example, and I see elements of the D-Day Museum. And if we're talking about militaristic, and we've got a King Henry VIII's castle just over the road. So how did you look at that particular comment? and tease it out a bit?
So, yes, I mean, as we set out in the presentation, we feel that, as you said there, that those detailed brick arches very much pick out the naval history in the city, and it's an appropriate response to the location. So, if the society saw it as a criticism, I can see it as a positive. So I think it depends on your viewpoint. In very broad terms, we're looking at has the scheme responded to its context, and in that regard we're very satisfied that it's very much responded to the particular context that it's in.
Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on, both of those comments, and the comment the Portsmouth Society made. Are there any proposals to, first of all, were there any discussions about materials and making the building appear lighter when you were negotiating this? I think quite a good job has been done on that, so I just wanted to air that a bit. And second of all, great pun. Is there any chance of growing plants up the outside and that sort of thing? Because I think that would break it down substantially, and we could condition that.
So in terms of growing plants at the outside, there's no proposals to do that. That's something that the applicant could choose to do. I don't think it's necessary to make the application acceptable. In terms of the design, I'd take the view that it stands on its own merits as a design within the space that it's in. Personally, the pre-application discussions sort of predate my involvement in the scheme, so I couldn't comment particularly on that, but I'm satisfied in terms of what we've arrived at is something that will be an asset and certainly be an improvement over the current appearance of the site.
Councillor Atwell. Oh, can I come back to you? Yeah. Oh, was it relating to that, Judith? Okay.
Whether or not it's necessary or you've recommended it, would it be possible to condition some planting on the outside just to soften the outlines, and also because it's a good idea for biodiversity?
I think part of the issue is, if we could just get the red line back up, I think the building is at the boundary of the site. So, in effect, yeah, so my understanding is, in terms of the red line, the land beyond this isn't under the applicant's control. So they would have to approach PCC, I presume, in order to deliver on that. As I said, my view is it's not necessary to make the scheme acceptable in terms of the planning application, but it's something the applicant could explore at their own once the scheme is delivered.
So just to answer my question, could we put a condition on that asked them to negotiate with the council to do some external planting? The thing about the site at the moment is it is that fairly dense hedge all the way around that sort of softens the building into the landscape. And I wondered if it might just go some way towards reducing the criticism of the Portsmouth Society, whose views I normally respect a great deal. Would that be possible, please?
I think that's problematic as a planning condition because it requires the agreement of a third party, notwithstanding that the third party is PCC. I'm not in a position to talk for the leisure department about what their intentions are and what they would want to see done within the common itself. So as a planning condition, once you get beyond the red line, you need to be certain that the applicant can deliver on the particular condition. Normally, you'd have the benefit of a blue line around the site, which is land that they also own, that you can they control, and therefore you can have confidence they can deliver a condition on. So I think in this case, because it lies outside the red line and lies outside land on their control, a condition wouldn't work. You could add an informative about best endeavours.
Be happy with some sort of informative best endeavours, but you don't want to get into the situation where the City Council wants to do that, and then has to ask permission and doesn't get it. We want, I think, to have an open door to that.
Really sorry, Paul, but we don't do Q&A with the people doing the deputations. Otherwise, we'd be here all day, and we're often here all day anyway. But I'm sure it's a sensible offer, but we'll have to make a decision within the committee. Councillor Atwell.
Turning to representations, I wonder if officers could provide a response to the objection around that was raised around glaring spotlights, and also is there sort of the concern around more party nights something for this committee to consider?
So I'll take the second one first. Potentially, but there's from our assessment as a planning application, there's no reason to suggest that would be a result or a factor. If something like that did occur, which caused a statutory noise nuisance, of course there are other avenues whereby the council can take action against a statutory noise nuisance. In terms of the lights, etc., one of the advantages, obviously, of this scheme is enclosed as part of the park, and then that can be lit and not need to cause any light pollution beyond the site. Whereas you can see from, if I go back to the, you can see there's a number of floodlights here, which are trying to obviously address this issue of use of the park for longer periods. So if the floodlights are there, we can't do anything about them. They're existing and they'll continue to be there. But in terms of a broader issue, it'll allow a longer use of the park, but without causing those sort of light impacts. And I'm also conscious that we do highlight in the report the distance to the nearest residential properties, which we're satisfied is a considerable distance and will protect their amenities.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councillor Madgwick.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually a legal question for Juliet, if possible. Recommendation 2 states that delegated authority be granted to the Assistant Director to add or amend conditions where necessary. What kind of blanket coverage does that approval recommendation give? Because I'd be very uncomfortable as a planning committee to allow somebody not from within this planning committee to make larger decisions.
I understand that you raised this at a previous committee. It's standard wording used by many authorities. So if the conditions need tweaking slightly, that would fall under it. Obviously, if they're doing something very different, it may need to come back to committee, but it depends what the changes are. But it's put in so that we don't have to come back and get authorisation for a small change.
If it's okay, Chair, I mean, maybe just for clarity, it might be worth just adding into that line minor. Yeah, just the word minor. Just for safety, because everything can be challenged legally, and I think the word minor would be sensible.
The wording as drafted is fine.
Would it harm putting minor in?
Well, there's no need. It would be for the officer to decide when they're considering if the conditions need changing. It depends to what degree. So they would use their professional.
Okay. I guess the word
on
minor is open to interpretation anyway, isn't it? What might be.
Yes, that's.
Chair, just to hopefully to reassure, if we felt we were in a position where we couldn't issue a decision which we felt was in line with what members had agreed and was beyond the scope of that, then we would bring that back for further consideration.
Okay, professional judgment. Okay, Councillor Smythe is next, and then Councillor Atwell.
My last question arises from the mention of the amount of sill that would be chargeable in this application. I went back through a few old papers, and we don't usually put that in a planning document, and I don't know why we put it in here, but it does particularly jar when the floor space is hardly the sort of floor space that's in it, is capable of generating the sort of income that, say, a domestic dwelling would per metre squared, but also that £239,000 is a huge sum for a charity that's relying on a range of grants and other things for doing. Are we, first of all, if we approve this application, are we approving that figure? And second of all, why was it included in this application? And third of all, what is the scope for the organisation to negotiate that, given their purpose and their lack of finance?
So the SIL...
paragraph 826.
Yes, the SIL regulations... Oh, sorry, I don't know what to... Yeah, sorry. So the SIL regulations apply... They are part of the process, but in fact apply separately to our decision-making today. The SIL data was just included for information. Noted about the issues, there are separate regulations relating to the application of SIL, not my area of expertise, and we can certainly provide a separate answer after the meeting if you're concerned about any of the processes on that.
Can I assist? We have a SIL charging schedule which has gone through the process of adoption, so it's done in accordance with that schedule.
Nevertheless, this is an unusual circumstance. Perhaps as a local councillor in the area, obviously we deal with SIL applications and other things, and we're very glad for having the SIL income, but this does seem a little bit of an aberration. Is there a chance to discuss that further later on?
Can I just ask, it's in the report, as Councillor Smythe has highlighted. Are we now saying that it's in the report, but it's just an information thing dealt with by a separate procedure, or are we saying it's relevant to the decision that we're making in front of us? Because I think it's a really good point.
So yes, so short answer, it's not a material factor. So if you grant the planning permission, then the SIL becomes liable. If you don't grant planning permission, the SIL doesn't become liable. It's, as I say, it's a benefit that accrues to meet the impacts of development by providing infrastructure. But yes, you're as a planning committee, or if we're making a delegated application, we don't have the ability to waive it, increase it, etc. We have to just apply the adopted schedule that we have done.
Okay, maybe, is it possible in future reports that can be caveated, and so it's useful information, but it's not actually substantial to the planning decisions? Okay. Does someone else have a hand up? Councillor Atwell. Thank you.
5.5, the part about flood warning service, is that conditioned in the report? And if it isn't, should it be? Because I can't tell whether that's part of condition 7.
Yes, so in the SMART, we had an updated flood risk assessment to deal with the issues of the long-term flood risks, and that includes the flood mitigation measures and evacuation measures. So hence why there's an updated condition 7 to deal with that. So we've got that information within that updated flood risk assessment.
Councillor Smythe.
A quick one, but for the avoidance of future confusion, on top of page 11, under paragraph 8.15, there's mention of a dwelling. Nobody's going to be living in there, are they? That word ought to be taken out, I think.
Yes, sorry, that's a typo that's got past my proofreading, so apologies.
Good spot. Good spot. Okay, is that the end of questions, members? Okay, so we go on to comments. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled this is here, not least because I don't know how long back it was, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I was instrumental in handing over this to the South Escape Park, and I'm glad to see that this ambition is coming to fruition now to benefit the city. The thing is, Declan Brooks is a Portsmouth-born lad, and he's a good role model for youngsters in our city. And the truth is that when we go around the city, and we asked all the communities during the community safety survey, went to Paulsgrove, Portsea, Milton, and everywhere in between. When we asked people what it was in the meeting that the council could do to make their area safer, every single time people said, give young people more things to do. And I think that's one of the benefits of the enormous, and we'll see another example a bit later, of what we do across Portsmouth, whether it's building Bransbury Park, whether it's KG5, whether it's all the work that we do with the Andrew Simpson Centre and BH Live, and a range of sporting groups across our city, in Wimbledon Park Sports Centre. It is so important that youngsters are given things to do. BMX is an amazing British-dominated sport, whether it's freestyle or whether it's track racing. Britain has Olympic champions in both, and Declan Brooks, as we heard, won the bronze medal. And as the deputation said, it is not necessarily about being elite, but it's about that grassroots sports and giving young children more things to do. But the spin-off too is coaching, biomechanics, sports physiotherapy, and a whole range of other jobs that come with the citywide sports economy. So that's that bit. The second bit is how it looks. Now, to me, I looked at it straight away and I saw the arches from Old Portsmouth, and I saw people sitting in them, and I saw elements of the D-Day Museum. So I think it fits in really well, and I think the design has been very well thought through, and clearly in discussion with the planners, they've made a really good application. The copper, of course, will tone down to the colour that we understand now. So I'm so pleased to see it. I wish them every success. So it only remains for me to say, now we have a real competitor to Gosport's BMX track at Southsea on the common there, and it's going to be a wonderful asset for the city. I presume there'll be Heritage Lottery funding coming, and British Cycling as the governing body will want to put money into it, I don't doubt for a moment. And the seal money, well, if it happens to be a problem, then perhaps we can invest the seal money back into the facility, for example. There's always another way to skin a cat. So there we are. I move the officer's recommendations gleefully.
I've got Councillor Hugh Mason, who put his hand up a while ago.
Chair, can I just come back in?
Conditions, sorry.
Under the SIL regs, there are exemptions that can be applied
Oh, right,
for. I
okay.
don't think
There's more than one way to skin a
The report
cat.
hasn't looked at that.
Yes,
So.
yes. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Councillor Mason.
This is a substantial building on a Grade 2 listed common, and so we need to be fairly careful about it. It is substantial. It will have significant impact on the common and the way in which people look at it. But I think the significant benefits to the general public, in this case, outweigh any adverse elements of the impact. And so I would second the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Smythe.
I echo the comments of the previous two speakers. I think this is a very good development, but I would like an advisory about encouraging the growth of climbing plants up the outside to just break some of the elements of the structure. And I'm sure the City Council will see its way to cooperating, as will the people who built the building. And I'd like that on as a advisory note, please.
Thank you. Anyone else got any comments? Councillor Vallely.
Just to say it's a great project, and I really think it's going to add to our city and to our people. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Having an overview of parks, I don't doubt that Paul was going to chip in and say, yeah, we're quite happy with that, I suspect. But anyway, parks can talk to him later on about this.
Yeah, we'll put that information point in. So we have a motion in front of us proposed by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Hugh Mason, to move officer's recommendation for conditional permission for this.
Chair, just to confirm, with the additional conditions from the SMAT as well.
I was literally about to add the conditions from the SMAT plus an informative best endeavour statement around the greenery, so that is captured the feeling of that is captured from the committee. So all of those in favour? That is unanimous, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us today. Okay. So, therefore, planning permission is granted. Thank you very much, everyone, for really good questions and interrogation of the application. So that brings us to the end of that item. We will now go straight on to agenda item. Yes, by the way, you don't have to stay for the whole meeting if your bit is done. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, which is 30 to 34 Great Southsea Street, and that, I believe, is being presented by Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have two applications at 30 to 34 Great Southsea Street. They've come due to the number of objections to committee, 6 objections. We have a planning application and a listed building application. For reasons of simplicity, we have one report, but there are 2 recommendations and therefore 2 votes at the end. The full description is set out in the officer report with a degree of overlap between the 2 consents, summarised here as a change of use of the public house to form 2 dwellings, and the construction of 2 new dwellings, total of 4, and elements of demolition and other works. Just to locate you, on the left-hand side we have the location plan, and so that's Great Southsea Street running north to south. It's one way for cars. I think it's from the south to the north. You emerge at the northern end on King's Road. The southern end at the apex there is the clock tower building that many people know as a landmark in Southsea. Otherwise, you can see it is there's a local shop on the corner, and apart from the application site and the pub next door, it's a residential area, essentially. On the right-hand side, in a bit more detail, you can see the fine grain of individual properties in the conservation area, mostly historic in terms of age. To the left-hand side, the west, you can see post-war development. These are 2-storey, probably local authority developed post-war blocks, each one 2 stories with 4 flats. You can see they're quite close to the rear of the site, and we'll come back to that later because of the juxtaposition proposed between the proposal and the 1960s or 70s blocks. Thank you. So on the right-hand side, we have the 2 historic buildings, which are counted as one listed building now because they are joined together inside with walls knocked through on both the ground floor and the upper floor. But historically, on the right-hand side, number 30 was the India pub, where the arrow is, thank you. Then on the centre, where it says Carter & Co., that was originally a fishmonger and game store. As I said, some years ago, the 2 were joined internally to form one building and has been used for a number of years for a pub with food, restaurant and upper storey B&B. So that is the listed building in the conservation area. Could you stay on that one, David, please? Thank you. Just to the right is the first dwelling on the northern side with the white bay window upstairs and so on. And then the left-hand side is the Gap site. That was bombed in the war, hence, and it's never been redeveloped. That's the pub garden serving the existing pub, which is the application site. There is a dropped curb, just you can't quite see, but serving the garden. That would need to be reinstated. It hasn't been asked for the Highways Department, but I think they've just missed that, and I've just caught it up, and that's in the conditions to reinstate the curb to full height, so that would provide an extra space or more on the street for on-street parking. To the rear, you can see the 2-storey post-war development I mentioned. We'll return to that later for the juxtaposition of the buildings, the closeness, and that side window. I'll come back to that later. And then on the left-hand side, you have, outside the site, the hole-in-the-wall public house. So I think at this stage, before I even get into the detailed plans, I can deal with 2 issues for you. The first is the principle of the conversion of the pub to residential. As set out in the report, Our emerging local plan has a policy that seeks to retain community facilities, and a pub is counted as a community facility, as indeed it is. And in the event of a proposal to lose a community facility, the policy requires a marketing campaign of at least 12 months. That hasn't happened because the applicant bought the site last summer and proceeded immediately with the planning application. So we're not trying to hide that or avoid that. That element of the policy isn't complied with. There's no marketing campaign that's been carried out for us to analyse. But that doesn't mean to say that the development is inappropriate in principle. We've gone on in the report to analyse, well, what are the local community facilities in the terms of other pubs locally. Of course, on the left-hand side, you have the Hole in the Wall, which, for those of you who don't know it, is a small community pub. I think it's fair to say a local community pub with a very nice atmosphere, and definitely serves as a very positive community function. Just down the road is the Barley Mow, another local pub, you could call it. And in the report, we've listed 4 other pubs within approximately 250 metres that also provide the normal services of a pub. So officers are quite happy that the loss of the existing pub, Carter & Co, would not unduly damage local community facilities. So we're happy in principle with the proposed conversion, and indeed the positive effect of providing new housing in those 2 original buildings. The next thing, while we're looking at the photograph, is movement and transportation. The 4 proposed dwellings, 2 in the gap site, construction, and then the conversion of the 2 original buildings to the right-hand side would provide 4 dwellings with a certain parking demand. This is, of course, a very sustainable location, very close to the city centre, and Gun Wharf, the university, Old Portsmouth, the seafront, Southsea Town Centre, Elm Grove, etc. Lots of public transport on all the facilities you expect. So a very sustainable location. It is in a residential parking zone where permits are required. There is the Enterprise Car Club, has 2 bays in very close proximity, should you wish not to own a car and hire one on an hourly or daily basis, along with the public transport. And then lastly, we would ask members to consider the current parking demand that needs to be balanced against the proposed parking demand. Obviously, staff and customers who may wish to come by car or other means of transport to the site for the pub and the pub restaurant and the B&B. Thank you. Moving on to the details of the proposals. The street in the Castle Road conservation area is very varied, mostly domestic, as I said, so you can see a fine grain of dwellings, normally quite narrow, 2 or 3 stories tall, whole variety of treatments. You've got brick, you've got painted brick, you've got render, and then you've got all sorts of architectural treatments around doors and windows, rectilinear, curved, and then at first floor there are some oriel windows. You can see in both photographs, small bay windows at height. So the applicant has looked very carefully at the local context and sought to replicate that in the architecture of the proposal. Before we come to that, the next photograph is just the listed buildings have limited interest inside. You've seen the outside and they have lovely frontages. Inside there's limited interest apart from principally these 2 faience tiled scenes in the original fishmonger. So the photograph on the right is in that original building looking out towards the street. So that's the shop front you can see, which by the way is not original, but you can see where the door would have been in the middle and a new door would be reinstated to provide access into that new unit and new house. So on the top left is the hunting scenes. Clearly you can see that tiled faience. On the right-hand side is the fishing scene. Members might have seen at the end of the report, because it's a listed building, we're telling the prospective occupiers, don't do anything to these without consent. They are shown for retention in the plans. Thank you, David. Onto the street elevation. So top right, that is the whole street scene. Obviously the conversion of the 2 historic buildings on the right-hand side. I mentioned the new front door to the central building. You can see that marked in brown. Full details along with all the other materials and design matters by way of condition. The former pub on the right-hand side has 2 doors on either side of that curved entrance. They would be retained. So very little change to the listed buildings externally, and not much internally either. I'll show you in a minute. Then on the left-hand side, the 2 new build dwellings. You can see their height fits in with the surroundings, and then I've showed you the variety a few moments ago. Here we've got the composition is pretty much the same of the windows, the first floor oriel windows, and so on. But they've gone for variety to reflect the variety in the street. So on the right-hand side we have brick, on the left-hand side we have painted brick, and then you can see slightly different window treatments and arch treatments over the doors to give that variety to fit in with the street. We feel that's a successful application in that respect, filling the site, what is otherwise not particularly attractive in the scene. It's a positive factor in the conservation area, and again, subject to details by condition, that should be a successful development. You can see on either side of the ground floor what looks like a gate. That's a metal railing and a small bin area that I'll show you in a moment on the floor plans. As it says bottom left, these are showing the removals in the building. So on the left-hand side, you have the open pub garden, and just the bits and pieces, and the external stair will be removed, and an ugly kitchen flue that comes out of the middle building at the back where it says trade kitchen. That's a lean-to. That lean-to will be removed and will become the courtyard garden for that middle dwelling. Top right, you can see the removal of various outbuildings and so on at the rear of the original pub. Again, to not very important features, and to create a courtyard for that house. And then in the middle of the building, where it's knocked through, you can make out the U shape of the bar. That would all be removed as well, of course. And then the internal divisions bricked up to return it to 2 individual premises as originally. Thank you, David. Onto the ground floor proposal. I'll start on the right-hand side with the original pub. Next to the dining room table there in the front, it's light, but that is a solid brick breeze block internal subdivision to return it to 1 property. Otherwise, not much change to the fabric apart from the removal of the elements at the rear to create that courtyard. So a very large kitchen dining area at the front and kitchen, etc. to the rear. The middle dwelling, again, a very large through kitchen, living, dining facility with the new front door inserted. Otherwise, not too much change there either, in a rear courtyard. And then the 2 new dwellings on the left-hand side, quite long and thin, but meeting all size standards for widths, bedroom sizes, and overall new dwelling size, far exceeding the minimum nationally for all 3 of the dwellings. So the 2 on the new build, you can just make out the bin stores on the front. They are a bit small. They can't accommodate the large waste bin, the large recycling bin, and the food caddy. I've spoken to the waste services officer. He accepts that. Most of the street doesn't have its own bin stores, so it's better to have some here rather than nothing. They can accommodate the large waste bin and the food caddy, and the City Council, I understand, does provide plastic crates, if you wish, instead of a bin for your recycling. So that could be popped on top of that, or on a shelf, or indeed in the good-sized dwelling. Otherwise, you've got the kitchen, the living room at the front, and then a big kitchen dining at the rear. Those bifold doors at the back, fully glazed to get lots of light into the back of the houses, and a small courtyard. Moving upstairs, again on the right-hand side, very little change in terms of fabric. As it happens, that would serve 5 bedrooms. The middle dwelling has 4. And then on the left-hand side, the new build is 3-storey. So you've got 2 large bedrooms in each dwelling on the left-hand side there, on the first floor, and then going up to the second floor, another 2 bedrooms. The central property, one of the listed building, would make use of the flat roof by building a new stair up onto the roof and providing that terrace you can see there, set back a long way from both front and back, with a privacy screen of 1.5 metres height. Given that heavy setback, it would be very difficult to see from the street You might be able to see it from the upper windows opposite, but again, the setback would ameliorate its impact in terms of amenity for the neighbour opposite or to the rear. And then from the street, I think I've walked the street to see whether or not how easy you'll be able to see it. It's a narrow street, so you have to go some distance away before you might just start to see it popping above the new dwellings or the pub. So we're happy with that obscure glazed screen in this instance on that dwelling with respect to the conservation area character and indeed the listed building. Thank you. Right, on to the matters of privacy. So that is the pub garden looking through from the street, and that to the rear is the two-storey flatted building. That window is a side window. It also serves a room that has two principal windows that face right over the garden area, we'll see in a minute. Nevertheless, it does exist, and with the two new dwellings that you've seen inserted into this pub garden area, there would be bedroom windows at close distance, 6.85 metres, I think, opposite that window there. We've touched on that in the report and worked further with the applicant post-publication on how to address that. It is a secondary window for the existing occupiers, so they have a lot of light from their two other windows serving their main living room, and they could just pull their curtain or have a net curtain or blinds. I think the effect is more on the occupiers of the proposed dwellings. That is their only outlook, and so they may feel looked into from that window. So we'll go on to look at some further details of how that's addressed. Okay, so bottom left we can see the bedrooms and the distance across. I've marked the window in yellow at the top, and then in red the circle there shows one of the other principal windows facing the other way, or at right angles across the grass. So bottom right, there is a view looking back at the application site, and that is the principal elevation. So it's to try and give you an impression of how the existing occupiers on Little Southsea Street would not be much affected in terms of light or privacy. But for the occupiers of the new dwellings, the applicant has proposed that the lower half of the windows are fixed shut, the bedroom windows, and obscurely glazed. So that would provide that privacy if you keep your curtains open. There we are, that's annotated, thank you. While the top opening light would be opening for ventilation and is eye line above, so standing in your room, you'd be able to at least see the sky and any other tall trees and so on. So that seems to be a good compromise, a good solution to achieving new development in a tightly constrained urban area. I think we've still got a couple of other images that further illustrate. There we are. So that's a section to give you an idea of the proximity and the detail of the window. Thank you. And then an aerial photograph to illustrate the cheek-by-jowl nature of their development as it is. And the other, you've got a series of four two-storey blocks there along Little Southsea Street, and you can see other windows, the same pattern, the same building typology, have similar relationships to other developments, including the existing pub. So it's an expected relationship, if I can put it that way, but in this instance addressed positively. Okay, members, I think those are the key issues for you. On to the, we've got the agent to make a deputation shortly. In the supplementary matters, just outlined that the Conservation Officer, since publication, has made his full comments of modest impact on the listed building and neutral impact on the conservation area. The waste and recycling, I've taken you through that already. The privacy, I've taken you through that just now. Then on to the conditions. The officer report made it clear that we needed a bit more time to fully draft up all the conditions, which we've now done in the separate appendix, which I'll just skip through for you. So for the planning applications, we've now listed the full list of plans. Number 5, the architectural material details, as I've mentioned, requiring full details of windows, doors, roof, etc., to make sure this is well executed. 7, construction management. We talked about the narrow street and the one-way. Not a huge development, but potential for difficulty on the street, so that would be managed with loading areas, plant materials and so on properly with the City Council Highways team. Number 9, water efficiency, standard condition for new residential with respect to the special protection areas. Number 10, reinstating the full height curb, that should say. Listed building, time limits, approved plans, and then importantly, architectural material details to deal with the new door, making good of fabric removal at the rear, investigating the faience on the front, these sorts of detailed matters to be properly controlled by officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. A lot of detail there. So we have one deputation, which is from the agent, Darryl Howells. You have 6 minutes, Darryl, from now.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. My firm, Darryl Howells Planning Consultancy, is the planning agent, and I speak on behalf of the applicant. Firstly, please may I say how professional and helpful your planning officer was prior to his departure, the conservation officer who has been proactively helping us out regarding this proposal from the outset, and now finally Mr. Turner, who has brought these applications together with the recommendations to approve as reported. The application is in effect in 2 parts. The first is the change of use of the existing buildings to 2 semi-detached houses. From the outset, the design team, along with your officers, sought to minimise the impact of the proposed change of use on the buildings, but improve the facades back to more of their original appearance and condition. I, along with your officers, consider those goals to have been achieved. The loss of the public house would not harm the community to any great extent, as the area is well served for alternatives. As you have heard, my client purchased the property in August 2025 as a going concern in the hope to try and make it work. However, due to failing custom and then a noise abatement notice served against the property, the operation of the premises was significantly curtailed, and ultimately now the premises has closed. The B&B accommodation at first floor was booked infrequently and only often by businessmen on trips. The lack of bookings again has forced my client to judge whether running such an establishment is financially viable. The conclusion is simple: it is not. The proposed change of use to housing will ensure these buildings are reused, do not become long-term vacancies, and will still positively contribute to the street scene through the negotiations that have occurred to the front elevations. The second part of the application is the erection of 2 houses in the current beer garden. Again, heavily influenced by your conservation officer, the design of the houses accord with the street scene, incorporating many features seen on older housing within the same street. On the rear elevation, the proposed first and second floor windows do require their windows of the lower half of the window panes to be obscure glazed to protect neighbouring amenities, as you have heard. Whilst the applicant would prefer clear glazing, the mitigation does indeed preserve the neighbouring amenities whilst offering the intended occupants an outlook over the diverse roofscape in the dense urban area which exists. I am pleased to confirm that all the statutory consultees that have responded raised no objection to the planning application. Many of the issues highlighted by the public have been addressed in the revised plans or judged acceptable in the planning statement. My client welcomes the planning conditions, and I would ask you to grant planning consent and the listed building consent on his behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howells. Okay, over to members. Any questions? Councillor Mason, and then Councillor Atwell.
Yes, looking at the buildings which are to be renovated, the old India Arms, what will be the cycle and rubbish storage for those buildings?
Thank you, Councillor. Apologies, I forgot to mention that, the rubbish stores while talking about the new build. Clearly, we do not want to have any interference to the front of the listed buildings, the lovely frontages. They're on the back of pavement, so there is no facility for a purpose-built store for the, so like most of the other historic buildings on the street, the occupiers, if approved, will have to find their own arrangements within their properties for their storage of waste. And the same goes for all 4 properties for cycles. We've got a cycle condition. If we can just about secure some sort of storage in the small yards at the back as well.
Councillor Atwell.
I just wonder if we could get a sense of how big the courtyards are across all 4 properties. I'm thinking about biodiversity, and because there's quite a lot of planting in the beer garden, that will go, of course. So I'm just wondering how much space there would be in the courtyards.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd have to guess by eye. The 2 new builds, the courtyards are about 3.5 metres wide. So by eye, I'd say about 2.5 metres deep. So that they're not large. You wouldn't expect that in this in the land available. Just big enough to get out and get some fresh air and some sun at the right time of day. The courtyards for the listed buildings, listed building are, as you can see, quite a bit bigger than that. A local planning authority, fair point, good point. The local planning authority wouldn't normally insist upon planting in private garden areas, while we will do it for a flatted development with communal gardens or an industrial development with public realm planting. Normally for new build housing, we'll only insist, us or any other planning authority I've worked for, only insist on planting scheme at the front of the property, effectively in the public realm, and then at the back it's down to the future occupiers how they wish to do that, pot plants, lay down a lawn or not. So in this instance, it is a very densely developed urban area where courtyards are perhaps more common than gardens, but hopefully people will have green fingers and want to put in their own pots. And then, of course, the middle property has got the large roof terrace where, again, they could put pots up there.
I'm going to go to Councillor Smythe, because that's a different question, isn't it, that you've got? Councillor Smythe.
Related question, given the Council's agreement to depaving and to increasing the areas where permeable ground is provided, can we make a condition that those courtyards and the back areas can be permeable? And that, of course, makes it much easier for somebody to put pots on which would drain into the ground when they're watered rather than anything else. We want to eliminate and reduce, as a council, the areas of the city that are paved over and where the rainwater goes into the main sewerage.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, there has been some debate, it may not be apparent from the report, about the existing site drainage, both foul drainage and hard surface water drainage from the roofs and the hard surfaces. I think it would be reasonable. I don't know how it would happen, it depends where the existing drainage is and what is possible, especially within the listed buildings, easier with the new build site as to how you would drain the rear courtyards and get that out of the site if it has to come to presumably Great Southsea Street in terms of gradient and falls and so on. But I think it would be reasonable to have a condition to that effect. It would possibly largely overlap with what Southern Water will be looking at, but we do have that emerging plan condition about that. So with the agreement of the committee, I think we could add an extra condition just to make sure we're satisfied on the sustainable drainage.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Atwell and then Councillor Mason.
Just to go back to the terrace, the roof terrace, and overlooking, is there a graphic to see whether anything's visible from the street?
Thank you, Councillor. I didn't include the whole graphic, but if we go further on, there was one that nearly gets there. If you carry on, David, please. This one. Yeah, it's up. So in the section there, it's up behind the setback. Just remind myself of the setback. 2.75 from the edge. I can't exactly show you there, but with that degree of setback, councillor, to look then down at close proximity, you've got to look past the parapet wall of the same building to start to see into two-storey windows. So, for example, there you could not see into the neighbour's window marked in yellow there on Little Southsea Street. It's too close because of the setback and the building itself getting in the way of the view. Ditto to the front, you would not be able to see, set at 1.5 metres anyway, so that's more or less eye height for a 6-footer, across the street on Great Southsea Street as well. So we're satisfied that the angles and setback preserves privacy.
Can it be seen by from the street, though? I'm assuming no, if you can't see anything from the top.
So I walked up and down the street, thank you, David. Yeah. As I said earlier, because it's a relatively narrow street, and because of the setback, importantly, you have to walk quite a long way down the street either way, and I've done the same on Little Southsea Street to see, okay, I'm now far enough away. On the south there, for example, the oblique view you would get up to the recessed balustrade would then be blocked by the new building itself because of the angle. And so I determined that at most you would see a tiny slither of obscure glazing, very recessive, very small, at some distance from the public realm, from street level.
If you were looking for it.
If you're looking for it.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Mason, sorry.
The building to the north, the India Arms, old India Arms building, has a cellar. Am I right that that has no natural light and so could not be used as an additional room?
Thank you, Councillor. I believe it has no natural light because it has a building on either side. I haven't noticed it has a light well to the front or to the rear, so, and they've not shown it for any proposed use. It's a large premises as it is, so I think that would just be a spare space for storage or whatever they might like.
Any other questions, members? Can we move on to comments and proposals? Councillor George Madrick.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, Chair. I will be supporting the application today. I think it's much needed housing, but I have a bit of scepticism, in the middle property. I think it's primed to be set up for an HMO, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see an HMO change of use application coming forward following this. It does seem like it's set up with, I mean, it looks nice, but it looks like it's being set up to be an HMO, so we'll see what happens there. Point 8.6 is a really relevant thing. I think it's sad to see another pub and restaurant close and being turned into housing. It's not one of these things that will get back as an asset in the community. I do find it slightly, I use the word, slightly insulting that they asked the committee to believe that they acquired the property in June and then submitted full plans in August 2025 because of an abatement notice. It's just not a realistic prospect. But the application would have been accepted probably all the same. I just don't take that story at all. But to say I will be accepting that. I think the plans are relatively good. I'm not a big fan of the courtyard space, but I think as mentioned by the officers, it's a reasonable excuse of why we can't do it, and it is much needed housing. I just really urge the applicant, if they listen today, not to try and submit it into an HMO at a later date.
Thank you for that. Is there any comment on that? I know if someone wanted to, it would be a completely different planning application for a change of use, but relevant comment to make? No.
Well, the councillor's right, it would need a planning application,
Yeah.
so that would be judged on its own merits.
Okay. Thought that would be the answer. I just thought I'd double check as it had been brought up. Councillor Hunt, did you have a comment or?
Yeah, I second the it was a
Was that a
recommendation.
proposal to move officers? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I second that. I see hares and running appearing all of a sudden, so we don't know what will happen. I think a bit differently. Maybe I'll be wrong, I don't know. But I think these people like these quirky houses, and I think there's going to be, a few units of accommodation there that will be snapped up very quickly, particularly in the current market. Say people like living in quirky accommodation. And I would urge the members to accept the proposition, because a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. I've seen so many applications that have been sent away over the years, and they come back worse than the first one. So this one, in all the circumstances, it is unfortunate to see places that have been used by the public for so long going a different way, but the pub industry, all these industries and shops and retail are all shrinking. You know, in Britain, retail is over provided for, according to the British Retail Consortium, by about 40% floor space. So it's very hard. Although if you walked up and down Kingston Road, London Road, and all those other roads, thanks to all the diverse shops we got, they're all mainly full up. Some we wouldn't want, some we do want. But anyway, yeah, so a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So I think and all the officers have worked really hard with the applicant on it. And like I say, it's not easy to see the changes in the character of the area, but the two new houses, looking at them, you know, they look like sort of 2 ups and 2 downs, whatever. I mean, they're going to be so useful to people, and I'm sure they'll be snapped up very quickly.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
Can we please, I would like to support both those comments. I think the application is a good one, but we need to put in a condition as suggested.
I've got it. I've
By
captured
Mr.
it.
Turner. If you've captured it, that's fine.
I will
But
mention
think,
it when I sum
we
up.
need to depave that area and make it easier for the drainage to
I've
go
got
elsewhere.
both.
And in fact, with the SUDS legislation that would, I
Yeah.
think, affect the new dwellings, we ought to just extend that into the old dwellings so that there is a permeable surface. Much easier to keep pot plants on a permeable surface because it doesn't leak out the water and then go straight into the sewage. So I'd look to the officers to phrase that with it subject to everybody's agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Atwell.
I'm concerned about the mural.
Yeah, I was about, that was going to be my
Really
point.
concerned about the mural, how that works in a domestic setting. I think that'd be an enormous tragedy. And I don't know how we, you know, how do you know with
So my understanding is that because it's linked to the listed building, someone's got to like that picture on their wall. And if they don't, then they can't destroy it. They have to think of a responsible way of covering it up. I mean, yeah, I have the same concerns. I mean, to find a property that you want and then just go, actually, I don't like that picture, you're going to have to like it, aren't you? Because it's going to be a pretty dominant feature in your lounge and living area. But I'm reassured that covering it is also acceptable, and I guess someone purchasing the property would need to be aware of those responsibilities as a listed building. Is that correct? Okay. In which case, are there any other comments? So we have 2 votes here. So the first one is the planning application, and the officer's recommendation is conditional permission, and that's been proposed by Councillor Madrick and seconded by Councillor Hunt, with not only the additional conditions that were in the SMAT, but also, do we need to work out the wording on the drainage and permeable surfaces here now, or can you capture that afterwards?
I can capture that's pretty straightforward wording with reference to the policy.
Okay. Okay, are you happy with that, Councillor Smythe? So with those extra conditions, can I have all those in favour, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I was seeing an extra person. God, I need a break. So that's 8. So that is passed and conditional permission is granted. We also have a separate vote, which I'm assuming, do I have to do? So George Madrick proposing and Councillor Lee Hunt seconding for listed buildings, the application, which is also for conditional permission with the extra condition in the SMAT. All those in favour? 8. Okay. So, planning permission is granted. Thank you very much. Okay, we're halfway through. Does anyone want a comfort break, or do we want to plough on through? It will never be 2 minutes, Councillor Madrick, but shall we have, we'll have a comfort break. So I'm going to be realistic because this never actually ends up being 5. I'm going to say we'll start again at 10 past. I think we're ready to go. Thank you everyone for keeping to the time. We've got 2 more applications left. So we're on to agenda item 6, which is the Moneyfield Sports Ground. And I believe it's David who's presenting this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is an application for variation condition at the Moneyfield Sports Centre in relation to the removal of condition 13 requiring public overnight parking, dating back to Planning Permission 18/00057, apologies. So, relatively short presentation because it's a technical matter which members need to debate on its merits, but just for members' understanding, so this is the site which was redeveloped. So when planning permission was initially granted, part of the justification for the scheme which delivered this, the development's now been partially completed in terms of the pitches and the partially built clubhouse, included this residential development to the south here, and also the parking area which is in situ there, and it's a little bit clearer to see laid out here. So this is a site as is, and the parking area is to the east along here. Just to get your bearings, the new residential development is just down to the south, out of shot. These are the approved elevations of the clubhouse, and in terms of how it was intended to be phased, you'll see this layout here. So there's, in effect, 3 intended phases of the delivery of the building in the bottom right there. In terms of plans and things, there's not much to look at. So the history is that when originally the scheme was approved, part of the justification for building residential development on what's an open space, we wouldn't normally do that, so there needed to be an exceptional planning justification for that, was about the delivery of the improved facilities for the sports club. So the sports club's since changed hands, and the current applicant is now the owner and operator. When that initial planning permission was granted in 2018, the condition about requiring or making the parking available for public parking was included at that time. Now you'll note from the report in 2024, members considered the issue of the removal of the parking, the condition before, and concluded that they wanted to see it retained. The applicant has come back with additional information that we've set out in the report. Particularly, they highlight how part of their functions, noting that some of the functions are not carried out on the site and some of the functions are, particularly the ability of this site to help in their delivery of qualifications. That is one of the functions that's highlighted in the report, and also highlighted in the report is the applicants' concerns about their ability to operate and enforce that condition in terms of the upfront costs that would be needed to monitor and enforce the overnight parking. So in terms of the application, we set that out. We, as officers, believe it's very finely balanced. We're noting the decision that members made previously, both in terms of imposing the condition and concluding that they wanted to keep it previously. Our view is it's very finely balanced, but there's sufficient additional information that if members wanted to come to an alternative decision this time round, there's sufficient material differences between this application and the previous one that would justify coming to an alternative view if that was the conclusion that members wanted to reach. Our view is professionally is as set out in the report, and we are happy to recommend that the condition be removed, Chair.
Thank you for the report. There's no supplementary matters. So we'll go on to the deputations. So the first, we've got 5 deputations on this. Do they all have 6 minutes? I believe so. Anyway, I'll go first to Claire Martin, who is the applicant. You have 6 minutes, Claire.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Claire Martin. I head up Pompey in the Community, which is has the freehold and runs the site currently. We're a charity affiliated to Portsmouth Football Club, those of you who don't know, and we use that brand to engage and enthuse the whole community. And as you've said, our pathway is very much, we have youngsters that come along and play and take part. We get them volunteering, qualifications. We currently have 23 of our students that are working for us on a part-time basis and 7 full-time members of staff that have come all the way through that pathway. When the planning was originally put in, it was put in by the developer, and they were a business. They were going to run the social club as a business, and the downstairs area was solely a function hall, which was going to be parties and boozy nights and wakes and a lot of drunken people being kicked out. That changed as soon as we became the freehold owner, and the downstairs area now is not a function room, it's 5 classrooms. So it's going to be an educational hub as well as a community hub. So the actual function of the facility has very much changed. A lot of what we do is open access. So we have young people coming along at certain times. Anybody can turn up. As long as we've got a contact number, they can play free of charge. We have a huge boot room full of boots. They can borrow them if they can't afford to play, because you have to be very careful with footwear to protect the pitches. And currently we are working, last year we worked with about 31,000 people out throughout the city, not just there obviously, but there's 50% female participation now at the John Jenkins, which we've called the Moneyfield site now. So it's a real opportunity for youngsters, not just from that ward, but from all over the city who come on their bikes. We've got bike sheds and everything to sustain the place. I think also from the residents' point of view, there's a bit of a lack of understanding on what the actual permission would grant. The permitted parking would only be from 11 p.m. at night on a Monday through Thursday until 8 o'clock the following morning. I think some of the oppositions were, you know, when I come home from work at 5:30, I can see parking spaces. It's frustrating that I can't park there. That's kind of irrelevant, because come the evenings, it's full of participants, and that parking would only start at 11 o'clock. One of our concerns is security. Once we've opened that up and people can come in at night, suddenly you've gone from a secure site to an insecure site, and you're opening yourself up for kids trying to get onto the pitches, damage like they've had at KGV with spraying, and all of that sort of stuff. So that's a massive concern of ours. Obviously, as a charity, every penny that we have, we want to go back into the young people and into our projects and programs. To allow the 11 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the morning, 4 nights a week, it is on a Sunday, 8 o'clock in the evening till 8 in the morning, would cost, we've worked out about £200,000, which seems disproportionate for the amount of parking hours and the amount of opportunities that would stop us spending that money elsewhere. And our priority is to, you know, make sure that those funds stay in the charity and go to where we know we can use them best. So yeah, I would like to ask that this condition is removed, and that we can operate a safe and secure site. Obviously there are safeguarding issues and all sorts if anybody can get in and access overnight as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Okay, the other deputation from the applicant is from Chris Gilder. You have up to 6 minutes as well.
It's okay. I think Claire has covered,
Okay.
in the interest of keeping the meeting moving, I think Claire has covered everything. that we
Okay,
need to
thank
say.
you, Chris. Much appreciated. In which case, I'll go on to the first of the other remaining deputations, which is Councillor Darren Sanders.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Kadir and Leonie will talk more about the current impact the scheme has on the residential amenity of the people of this part of North Baffins. But as the only deputy who spoke at the committee that agreed this, I'll talk a bit more about the history and also deal with some of the points that Claire's just raised. The first thing is to say that we, as ward councillors, I know we as a council support the much more community-minded focus Claire and the team have brought to the scheme here. I've known Claire for what, more than a decade, I think, probably too long. But we know how good they are The eastern side of the city, eastern side of our city lacks things for young people to do. And PITC's approach, very different to the approaches Claire has outlined in the original application, has really helped tackle that. But we'd be lying to say it's not had an impact on local roads. As I said it would at the committee that approved this scheme, which is one of the main reasons why I oppose this original development. Those of us who know Baffins well as those I've seen around the place recently for some reason I can't fathom, no parking is a problem. A 2008 parking survey of the area for permits did not meet the then threshold to introduce a parking scheme, so that wasn't pursued. That means other measures that can reduce the problem are good. The scheme that's been outlined in the committee report came about because people who belonged to the original developer, and that's Moneyfields Football Club, could park in the club car park. Many of them did this overnight. The permit scheme agreed in the consent was an extension of this, and it seemed a good way to give something back to a neighbourhood that was, putting it mildly, deeply suspicious of the club. And also because, as many people who weren't here at the time won't know, it also meant there was a net loss of open space, which is something I know that councillors in all parties are deeply concerned not to do. But most of the members of this committee chose to do it, and a way forward to deal with the existing parking problem was seen as one way, the main way, in fact, to try and deal with giving something back to the committee. But it is a permit scheme. And I think that there are many ways that you can deal with this that aren't the open all night to everyone scheme that I know Claire fears and will cost £200,000. The permit scheme would be open only to permit holders in an agreed area on a first come, first served basis. We know how many spaces there are, it's about 80 to 100. Each permit holder would be charged. The consented scheme in the original idea in the consented scheme was a nominal amount, £5 a year. Also, that's what Moneyfields said, for a permit for its car park. But that charge in this consent would be set by PITC. The hours agreed then are in the conditions now. Now, Claire has mentioned about the attitude of local residents. Many local residents are highly realistic about this. They know the hours. Some don't like it, some do. Some believe anything to actually reduce the parking issues. Many people come home from work late at night. So I believe that there is greater consent for the concept of this overnight parking scheme that Claire has outlined, even if some of it is just reluctant. But after this community's second refusal, because I was concerned about the impact on PITC's finances, I made further suggestions that will cut the cost of this scheme without defying the consent. For instance, restricting it to permit holders, as per the consent, is a start. Looking at other ways in which parking is enforced in areas that are very similar to John Jenkins. For instance, the work that's done by BH Live at the Mountbatten Centre, for instance, where there's restricted hours of waiting. Running a scheme similar to that at St Simon's Church, which has a number plate camera, warning and fines, and crucially, timings for entrance and exit. Putting something similar, perhaps restricting entry and exit to permit holders only, to half-hour slots, either side of the projected start and finish times, also, I believe, deals with the safeguarding issues and the real issues Claire has outlined that keeping it open all night for everybody would provide. But it also means the lights don't have to stay on all night. Now, that's not just a bill for PITC, but we know that's also a problem for residents in Salcombe Avenue. We know these are lower cost options. They're not in the report, but we remain happy to work with PITC on them. Our door is always open, as Claire always knows. For a development that impacts on the residential amenity of local people, to remove the one thing designed to reduce that impact feels unfair to local residents in this part of North Baffins. And that's why this committee, not just once, David, twice, has refused to do it. I also note that that decision has, as far as I know, never been appealed. We all know there's a loss of trust in the planning system. We get blamed for the planning inspector overturning decisions we have taken as a committee. The government's plan to stop things like HMOs from being decided by councils in public is another way of reducing that trust, and that's a shame. One way we can restore that trust is to make developers honour their commitments. And that's why I'm asking you for the third time to honour the commitment made in the original consent, refuse this application, and let us work with PITC on options that are much, much lower cost. Thank you.
Spot on. Well, there's a surprise. Okay. So the next deputation that I have on my list is Councillor Leonie Oliver.
Brilliant. I'm using a phone, so I'm sorry if it goes. Chair and councillors, I'm speaking today on behalf of the residents in Baffins. We are already under intense and growing pressure. This is not just about numbers, it is about people's daily lives. Based on available data, Baffins has a population of around 15,100 people. That equates to roughly 6,500 households. Using the typical Portsmouth car ownership levels, this means there are approximately 8,000 to 9,000 cars in the area. However, the number of available parking spaces is estimated to be between 6,000 and 7,500. And that clearly leaves a shortfall of between 1,000 and 3,000 spaces every single day, just in Baffins. And what does that look like in practice? It means coming home in the evening and not knowing if you'll be able to park anywhere near your home. It means driving around for 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes, exhausted, frustrated and anxious. It means finally finding a space, sometimes streets away, and then walking back alone late at night, often in the dark. For many people, that feels unsafe, and for some people, that is unsafe. And increasingly, people are choosing not to go out at all because the stress of trying to park when they return is simply too much. Just have a think about that. Residents are starting to feel trapped in their own homes because of parking. This is not a small issue, and this has a serious impact on the quality of life. So when 80 to 100 parking spaces were promised to residents, spaces that would have made a real, tangible difference, it mattered. People relied on that. They believed that pressure would be eased, even slightly. To now take that away and potentially leave that space unused is not just disappointing, it feels deeply unfair. You have an opportunity here to recognise the lived reality of residents and to act in a way that supports them, not adds to their burden. Please don't make a decision that leaves residents feeling trapped, unsafe and unheard, because that is exactly what this will do. If you take these spaces away, you are not just removing parking, you are removing people's freedom to live normally in their own homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And now to Councillor Councillor Kadir.
It's all right.
Sorry.
It does work.
I was trying to multitask.
But there's an Adair here as well, so...
Oh, dear.
Well, you can. All right.
Over to you. 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me this floor. No one doubts that good works that has been done by Pompey and the community at the St. Jenkins Stadium. Yet it is us, as the local councillors who deal with this stuff, this across the city, do not see. The stadium's impact on local roads, the residential amenities our residents have to live with. Residents from various roads, including Moneyfield, Folkestone and Dover, face major parking problems, and anything that can reduce those we know will be welcome. Let's take the word of one of our residents of Dover Road who came to see us last Sunday with the photos, a quote. On this occasion, the car park can be seen to be quite clearly full, and cars parked on double yellow lines on its access road. This has yet an effect of almost every street surrounding the stadiums to be taken up with people parking on gain access. I myself witnessed this chaos with multiple vehicles driving around, looking and eventually parking on double yellow lines, illegally on junctions and blocking access to an emergency vehicles. As the long-suffering residents of Dover Road, it really is not acceptable to be told that enforcement officers are the solution. They are not. I, among others, oppose this planning application for Moneyfield extension precisely for this reason. But residents' concerns were ignored. It is unacceptable to live in an area of Portsmouth where you cannot go out because you know you will not be able to park. I live here, what I'm supposed to do. Unquote. If you change this condition today, what is supposed to do? And he is not alone. As the Councillor Sanders has said, there are other options available that can meet what was permitted for less money that Pompey and the community believes it will cost. On that basis, I ask you to yet again reject this change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kadir. Okay, that brings us to the end of our deputations. So I'll go to members for questions. Councillor Atwell.
The cost of delivering the condition has been mentioned, but is that for us to consider? Is it material?
Short answer is yes. In terms of the bigger picture, when the current applicant took the site on, the planning permission was in place and that condition was in place, so they would have been aware, or should have been aware, that they were taking on that particular responsibility as part of the scheme. But we have had regard to it as a material factor because of the practicalities of enforcing the condition.
Councillor Mason.
I went back to the meeting of the 17th of October 2018, which Councillor Smythe will also remember. And one of the minutes states, a condition ensuring the car park is open to residents could not have been imposed on this application. However, as the applicant has offered this provision, it would be an enforceable condition. Do we have any understanding as to why the applicant offered this provision in the first place, since they didn't have to? What benefits did it bring to them to offer this provision?
So my understanding of the history is that the officer report back in 2018 didn't recommend the condition, but it was imposed by members. And clearly at the time, so what we conclude from that was that as part of the public benefits of delivering the scheme, the committee felt it was necessary to have that as an additional factor. So we were making an exception to our policies, which we were building houses on an open space, which we wouldn't ordinarily do. So in order to justify that, we needed a suite of public benefits, which would arrive from that, which would be the pitches and the clubhouse, etc. But in addition, members clearly at the time felt that the overnight parking was an essential public benefit that needed to be delivered as part of those suite of benefits.
Councillor Mason looks... I'll come to you. I just want to know whether that answers your question.
Not entirely, because it was an offer by the applicant. Now, the offer, an applicant wouldn't offer it unless there were benefits to the applicant. Do we know what the benefits to the applicant of offering this were?
I'm not sure it's relevant now. I think it's a short answer as the site's changed hands. I think what we need to do now is judge the fact that the condition exists and I would have thought the benefit to the applicant was ensuring that they got the planning permission back in 2018 in terms of offering that. How we need to view it today is that the condition was imposed, so it's part of the permission, it's part of those public benefits that were secured at the time. And what members need to consider now is, does the scheme as a whole deliver enough public benefit if it doesn't include that public overnight parking? Sorry, hopefully we've got there with a reasoned explanation in the end.
Councillor Smythe.
I remember this being a particularly long and contentious planning committee to sit on, and I sat on this and the subsequently, the one that where we confirmed the decision to have that condition. We have to remember that there was a loss of public open space, which is a very, very rare thing. It's not something that we do lightly in this city because we've got so little open space. And I think the overwhelming feeling of the many protesters, I remember 2 or 3 people I knew even there, people I knew from the allotments and other things, coming along and objecting strongly to the permission being given at all. And one of their complaints was of the lack of parking and the more increased difficulties of parking if that condition wasn't put in. I don't remember the applicants being particularly upset about that condition, although it's undoubtedly potentially difficult. And I can see that the applicant is doing a lot of community benefit. But I don't think we should kind of just, you know, the use of public open space for any development, even if it's funding a good cause, is not quite, it's almost unprecedented, really. We just don't do it. And I just wanted that to be something that, do you think that was taken into account, and was the parking agreement a good way of compensating for that?
In terms of when the original consent was granted back in 2018. Yes. So that's my understanding from the original details and report, which I'm just looking through as I'm responding to you now. So yes, I mean, very much that offer was part of the wider public benefits that the scheme was intended to deliver, along with it making an exception to our policies.
Councillor Atwell, question?
The report tells us that the previous decisions are material. Can officers give us some sense of the weight we should attach to those?
Yes, so the council as a whole should show that it approaches its decision-making consistently. So in a situation whereby within the last, so where were we, June, under 2 years, we're still dealing with the same local plan, although we've got our new local plan emerging. But in terms of our advice, there's not a significant material change in terms of any of our policies. There is a material difference in terms that you've had additional information from the applicant, which we set out in the report, and the justification, particularly around the training and provision of qualifications. So there are material differences, but if members didn't feel that they were sufficient to cause it to rethink its decision, then you should make a decision consistent with your previous decisions.
Councillor Smythe.
Isn't it the case that the condition goes with the land, not with the current owner of the land?
Yes, so when the site changed hands, all the requirements of the planning permission transferred to the new applicant, so the current applicant, I should say. So in taking on ownership, they would have been aware of the requirements in the planning permission and the need to provide the overnight parking.
And presumably it's also the case that the cost of implementing that condition could be varied by a different design, a different approach to it, and that in itself can't be a reason for not upholding the condition for this particular applicant.
So we don't have an alternative method of enforcing or delivering the condition which is cheaper. So you don't have any counter evidence to the figure that's been given by PITC. There's no reason not to accept the figures that they've been given and the cost to them. So whilst it's been suggested there may be alternative ways of delivering it, those aren't before us today. So we're accepting the position that the applicant's telling us about the cost of that. As we've already advised, the weight to be given to that is lesser in the grander scheme of things, because it's a factor that they would have been aware of when they took on the ownership of the site. And that's why it's part of the weight that we've given to the recommendation to approve, but not the main bit, which is more about the public benefits that the applicant delivers.
Question?
I mean, just a supplementary question on that is there a justification for postponing this until the costs are investigated? Because number recognition and some sort of registration scheme, it seems to me, wouldn't cost that much money. And that has been suggested by the ward councillors. It's, you know, again, that wasn't relevant at the time that we imposed this condition, and the fact it's suddenly become relevant now seems to me something that could possibly be sorted out at a lower price.
Wait.
I think any way of providing permits enforcement, any of the issues that have been referred to, will all cost the applicant a significant sum of money. So I can't imagine that an auto number plate recognition system is particularly cheap for them to deliver. We don't have any alternative information that suggests that you can do it at 10%, 25%, 50% of the figure that's been said. I think it's reasonable to accept the information that's been given by the applicant about how much it would cost to enforce the condition. So I think you should make your decision based on the information that you have before you, whether that's positive or negative.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Vallely.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but there is still money available. I don't know if Baffins have any. Just a question for Baffin's ward councillors, actually.
I still think that we need to stick to material planning reasons. Otherwise, we're at risk as a committee trying to work out something that I think the questions that have been asked has really focused what we have before us, and we have to be disciplined in that.
And remembering, I think you did confirm that the permission goes with the land, not with the user.
Exactly.
So it could be sold to a shark-like company with no objectives of doing anything social, and we couldn't stop that. But we could still make them compensate for the loss of land of the original application. Is that right?
I believe so.
Apologies, I was trying to catch up on the message and I missed the substance of that question.
I think Councillor Smythe was just reinforcing the fact that it's a condition on the land and that we should stick to that rather than trying to work out, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're trying to work out the solution to a problem which is relevant, but not material planning.
I mean, in terms of moving this on about, are there alternative options which might be a lower cost to the applicant, then rather than a deferral, I think our advice would be to refuse the application. Then we can have discussions with the applicant about an alternative method which may reduce their costs. To date, because the requirement of the condition is to submit a parking management plan, that's never been discharged because my understanding is the parking's never been offered for public parking. So that's an alternative whereby if the application is refused, we draw the matter to a close on the basis of the information that you've got today, then we can explore with the applicant whether there's a cheaper option which may allow them to comply with the condition.
Okay, Councillor Outwell.
So the condition was upheld in June 2024, but public parking has never been offered. So how long do people have to deliver conditions?
Well, as it stands, they're in breach of the condition. So the question would then be about whether for the authority it's expedient to enforce the condition. Clearly what the applicant is showing is their position is that they can perceive there's problems in delivering on the condition, which is why they want it removed and why the application's before us. But yes, as it stands, but also I have to double check the wording of the condition in terms of the extent of it would be in breach, is the short answer.
Can I then ask a procedural question? So if we're looking at approval to amend previous conditions, but one of the suggestions from the officers was that we could refuse it in view of officers working further with the applicant to come to a solution. So how does that sit with a breach of the original condition? I don't, in terms of planning.
So you can be in breach of the condition. The issue is whether the authority chooses or decides it's expedient to enforce the condition. Where we're working together towards a solution, and we believe there's a solution between all parties which will allow them then to comply with the condition. We wouldn't ordinarily then serve a breach of condition notice because we're moving positively.
Okay, any other questions?
The head of planning gave us said until we're completely fitted out and we're functioning fully, which we're not at the moment, we can continue.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. So they're not in breach of condition. Okay. Therefore, my question has been answered. Okay. Any other questions? Any comments or proposals? Councillor Hunt.
I've listened very carefully, and it's very clear that PITC want to have a secure site. How they deliver that is a matter for them. But I can see... I believe that if the committee was to go change its mind now, it would bring it into disrepute with many people across Baffins because we looked at this several times now. And we want it, because when something large like that comes into an area, there was a lot of opposition at the time, but it was sold to the local residents with some public benefit. Not much, but parking was indeed one of them. And that seemed to take the sting out of it, as it were. So the application secured a lot of benefits for itself, and I note that the use of the proposed club building is now educational and vocational, that sort of thing. So the club probably thinks the situation has changed, but for the residents who were promised that they would be able to park there overnight, they expect us to keep that, and I see absolutely no reason to change now. So I disagree with the officer's recommendation. I say to ensure the delivery of wider public benefits, the conditions should remain as it is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunt. Is there anyone else who wants to comment or second that proposal? Oh, Councillor Smythe, sorry, I didn't see you. Oh, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
I think PI, Portsmouth and the community do an absolutely great job, but they did buy the site with the eyes open, and I think there should be some more investigation of this condition for the same reason as Councillor Hunt said. Nothing against the organisation or anything, but I would like to second that recommendation to refuse this.
Okay, are there any comments or counter proposals to that?
Yeah, the only thing, if I may add, the officers clearly sees the borderline case, and this kind of scrutiny that's coming today in the near future won't be available to the public because this will be decided by unelected officers. So I just want to add that point in here. You know, I intend to uphold the original decision of the Planning Committee for every good reasons which I've described. But in future, unelected officers, I'm sure they'll listen to people, but they may take a different view. I just want to get that on the record as it gets near.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunt. So, okay, we've got one proposal in front of us, which is a motion to refuse the officer's recommendations for conditional approval to amend the conditions, as we have explored extensively. So, all those in favour of that proposal to not support officer's recommendations? 1, 2, 3. It's unanimous again. It's 8. It was a difficult one. It's a difficult one. Yeah. But we have to stick to planning reasons for our decisions. Okay. Thank you very much for your deputations, everyone. Feel free to leave if you don't want to stay for the last agenda item. Thank you all.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
I have to declare an interest. The interest is this, that it's, obviously we're in an election period and I've been calling along North End Avenue, as is elsewhere, and I have previously met Mrs. Walsh on her doorstep, and I gave her advice about process. For example, she did not know she could come here today. So I told her that she could come if she sent in the appropriate request. So that's how I know her, and I just wanted to put that on the record in case it ever came up.
There's no declarations to make there.
All right.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so the last agenda item is 77 North End Avenue, and I believe it's David presenting.
Yes, thank
Over
you,
to you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, so this is an application at 77 North End Avenue. Excuse me, I'm just getting to snap this up. For the change use of property from a Class C3 dwelling house to a 9-person, 9-bedroom HMO. Location of the property is in red there, on the end of on the western end of North End Avenue, close to the junction with Gladys Avenue. And you can see the property there next to the end terrace dwelling. In terms of the property, typical of the housing stock in this area, as you can see, a 2-storey terraced house. In terms of your policies on mixed and balanced communities, we have looked into all available information about existing HMOs in the area and identified that there are currently 2 shown with the purple triangles on the plan there. So with this property, that would bring the number of HMOs within a 50-metre radius to 5.9, 3 out of 51, and that would be below your 10% target in the adopted HMO SPD. In terms of the existing floor plan, so the existing properties are currently a 4-bed property. The scheme will extend and significantly remodel the property under permitted development, so that would include this rear single-storey extension and a loft conversion works and internal works as well. What that results in is 3 ensuite rooms to the ground floor with a shared kitchen diner in the middle. Up onto the first floor, further 3 ensuite rooms, and then into the second floor and the converted loft space again, and another further 3 ensuite letting bedrooms. What that means in terms of the external appearance, so the permitted development loft extensions you can see here, and then the rear ground floor extension is there, and just an internal shot of the cross-section show how that would be delivered and the ceiling heights within the building. In terms of the layout of the site, so there's a rear yard, an existing outbuilding which could be used for cycle storage. The rear extension is shown there, and you can see a modest amenity space available for occupants. and just an aerial view of the property, the rear of the property there. The rear extension would be added into this area here. In terms of the updates from the SMAT, you can see that we've received the private sector housing comments, and they've confirmed it would need to be licensed by themselves. There were minor amendments in terms of the drawings, providing some clarity on that sectional drawing, which were received after the application was submitted. Looking at the scheme as a whole, it complies with your adopted guidance in the HMO SPD, and the scheme is recommended for approval, subject to the updated condition 2 with the amended plans as listed in the SMAT, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have several deputations, and the first one is from Sarah Walsh, who is objecting. So you have up to 6 minutes, Sarah. Can you press your mic? Just
Sorry. I'm writing to formally object to the planning application for the change of the use of 77 North End Avenue into a 9-person house, multiple occupancy. As the owner of the adjoining terrace property, I have serious concerns regarding the impact this proposal will have on residential amenity and the character of the area. This proposal represents an over-intensive use of a terrace property. A 9-bedroom HMO would result in a significant increase in noise, disturbance and general comings and goings. Given that the property shares a party wall with my home, this raised particular concerns about noise transmission and loss of quiet enjoyment. I'm also concerned that the proposal conflicts with Portsmouth City Council's policies on HMOs, particularly in relation to over-concentration. The introduction of such a large HMO risks contributing to an imbalance in the local community and undermining the established residential character of the area. Furthermore, the scale of development raises concerns about increased pressure on parking in an already congested street, waste storage and collection issues associated with a high number of occupants, the suitability of the property to accommodate such a high number of residents without resulting in poor living conditions. The proposal would result in material change to the character of what is currently a residential, family-orientated street, introducing a level of intensity that is not in keeping with surrounding properties. While I understand property values are not a primary planning consideration, I am concerned that the development would negatively affect the desirability of the neighbouring home. Also, if the sewage system is up to coping with extra sewage. For the reasons outlined, I would strongly urge the Council to refuse this application. I would ask the Council to confirm whether the proportion of HMOs in this area already approaches or exceeds policy thresholds. As I understand, Portsmouth operates controls to prevent over-concentration. Also, I'd like to bring up that I have not been given a party wall agreement. The roof has been removed, the floors have been lowered without prior permission of a party wall agreement. According to the government website of party walls, section 2 of the Act, to cut into a party wall to take bearings of beam, for example, loft conversion, to raise height of party wall, for example, adding another storey, the duties of the person doing the work must, under the Act 5, you must inform the adjoining owners, 7 and 8 paragraphs. You must not even cut into your own side of the wall without telling the adjoining owners of your intention, at least 2 months before planned work to the party wall. I noted that on the side of the drawing for the building it quotes, the drawing, unless noted, does not represent compliance with the Party Wall Act 1996, and if required, all agreements are to be in place before work commences. Also, it quotes, it's a principal contractor's responsibility to ensure planning and building controls and approvals are in place prior to work commencing. Should works commence prior to relevant approvals, Apple Core PDM Limited accept no responsibility. This I find very worrying. As I said, extensive building work is gone ahead, removing roof, building an extension, bricking up windows, adding windows and doors and lowering floors. I could have put a court injunction in place, but I would leave my home open to the elements as there's no roof exposing my party wall. My buildings are Victorian, so the brickwork is old. If the proper practice is not adhered to in early stages of development, I don't believe fire regulations, health and safety and building controls will be a priority. And will there be an escape for the loft room? I feel there is no care and consideration for the neighbours. My life has been violated by no communications from anyone about a party wall agreement and notice of the HMO being proposed next door. My objections are based on the following planning grounds with specific reference to Portsmouth City Council's adopted policies. Article 4 direction. 1. The application site lies within an area covered by the Council Article 4 direction, which was introduced to remove permitted development rights for changes of use from C3 to C4. Proposals undermine the clear intent by introducing an additional HMO into the area where cumulative impacts are already a concern. As such, the development conflicts with the policy PCS 23 of the Portsmouth Plan, which seeks to prevent harmful over-concentration and maintain balanced communities. 2. The HMO's typical results in a more intensive pattern of occupation, including increased noise, late-night activity, frequent commons-goings, and this would be detrimental to neighbouring residents and contrary to policy PCS 20, which seeks to safeguard residential amenity. The surrounding streets already experience significant parking pressures. Additional demand generated by multiple occupants would lead to increased congestion and potential highway safety concerns. 4. The higher occupancy levels will also generate increased waste volumes in streets with a limited space. This will increase visual clutter, potential obstructions of pavements, increased waste generation, and a greater risk of health and safety issues regarding increased breeding grounds for pests, such as rodents and flies, increased air pollution, which could lead to breathing problems, increased risk of hazardous waste, and potential water contamination from decomposing waste. Cumulative impact of HMOs can fundamentally alter the character of residential areas, reducing the availability of family housing and weakening community cohesion. This would also further erode the established character of the area, contrary to the Council's strategic objectives. Areas with high levels of pollution...
Can you bring your comments to... Have you nearly finished?
Yes.
If you just finish that sentence.
Right. Increased volumes of people reduces attractiveness and leads to lower property values. I finished.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't know how much more you had to
I
go,
agree with
but
that.
thank you for your deputation. Okay, so the next deputation on our deputations list, it says Simon Hill, the applicant. He's not actually the applicant, but he works for the applicant and wants to speak in favour. So Simon, you have up to 6 minutes from now.
Good morning, Chair and members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to clarify that I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant and have their permission to do so, but I'm not actually the applicant myself. I'll make reference to many statistics during my deputation, and in the interest of sticking to my 6 minutes, it isn't practical for me to reference each source individually. I'm happy to do so should you want me to afterwards, but they include many white papers, Portsmouth City Council's own website, Office for National Statistics, many news outlets, as well as many landlord associations, etc. This application seeks consent for a 9-bedroom, 9-ensuite, 9-person HMO at 77 North End Avenue, and I'd like to briefly highlight why this is a fully policy-compliant, well-designed and sustainable scheme, as clearly set out in the officer's report. Firstly, I want to confirm that all of the works being carried out on this property are fully compliant with permitted development rights. That is to say that the extension and the loft conversion are fully compliant. Neither of them require any planning permission for them to be implemented on their own. The only planning permission therefore required is for the property to be operated as an HMO, i.e. 3 or more unrelated individuals. Indeed, the property next door at number 79 North End Avenue has been extended significantly and arguably more significantly as a family home than 77 North End Avenue itself. It's exceptionally important to note that the property has rear access to the garden, which allows the rear ground floor bedroom the ability to exit through the the rear garden, and the rear communal alleyway behind the garden of number 79, i.e. it's fully compliant. Secondly, in terms of HMO concentration, the proposal remains comfortably within policy limits. Within a 50-metre radius, we've already heard that there are currently only 2 HMOs out of 51 properties. This scheme would increase that to just 3, just 5.9%, which is significantly below the council's own 10% threshold. Thirdly, on quality of accommodation, every room meets or exceeds the council's adopted standards. To be exceptionally clear, the measurements of the ground floor bedrooms are only measured from the second internal door. That is to say that the 10 metre squared that is provided is usable space. The lobby is not counted within the 10 metre squared. An email's been sent to the planning officers to confirm that, although I'm not sure whether they'll have had that through, but it is a really super important point. So, all bedrooms are compliant in size, all en-suites meet the required standard, and the communal space far exceeds minimum requirements. Very importantly as well, the loft accommodation is fully compliant in terms of head height. All of the bedrooms achieve a minimum of 2.3 metres height, over at least 75% of the floor area being at this height, ensuring genuinely usable, high-quality living space, and this is annotated on the plans. The officer clearly concludes that the scheme provides a good standard of accommodation for future applicants. To be very clear, it is a fully compliant scheme with regards to policy, and there is no compliant reason regarding room sizes which this could be refused. Thirdly, regarding impact on neighbours, I'd like to firstly apologise to Sarah Walsh, as I heard in her deputation about the issue of the party wall. Albeit I'm not the owner of the property, and equally it's not the responsibility of the owner of the property to do the party wall. It is, as she said, the responsibility of the principal contractor, but I'd like to apologise unreservedly on their behalf for the fact that it hasn't been addressed. Technically, the property next door to her side is 2 apartments rather than 1 house, and therefore I think that might be one of the reasons for the omission or oversight. That said, whilst I understand the frustration, and I will look to get this rectified ASAP, the Party Wall Act isn't actually a planning consideration. I'd also like to confirm, again in response to Sarah Walsh's deputation, that I can confirm, importantly, this is a 9-bedroom scheme. That actually means there's significantly more fire regulations and insulation regulations than there would be for an 8, 7 or 6-bedroom scheme. And therefore, there is a significant amount of insulation being installed along all aspects of the party wall of this property, which I genuinely hope minimise any impact whatsoever on the neighbouring properties. I can also confirm that additional bin storage will be provided, with bins being purchased by the owner. On highways and parking, there's no objection from the highway officers. The parking demand is no greater than the existing lawful use under all relevant policies, and the site benefits from a highly sustainable location with excellent access to public transport and local services. There are 2 bus stops within 50 metres. Statistically, from the research I've been able to do that I referenced earlier, nationally around 77% of households have cars. Again, statistically, around only 15% of HMO tenants have cars. Concerns around drainage and infrastructure have also been addressed and are not valid grounds for refusal. The development is fully compliant with building regulations, and the waste pipework within the property, which is the responsibility of the owners of the property, has been meticulously replaced as part of the development. Members, it is really important to note that there is a wider trend across the city that will only be significantly reinforced by the Renters' Rights Act that comes into play in 2 days' time, which is last month, statistically, according to the council's own HMO database, there were 3,415 HMOs. Today, 3,289 HMOs. So there's been a net loss from 3,415 to 3,289, over 100 HMOs lost. Around 3% of our HMOs lost in just 1 month. Similarly, on this, 1,144 were flats, and there's now only 1,030. This is really important. It shows a clear shift from low standard HMOs that are apartments to higher standard, fully compliant, purpose converted HMOs. Indeed, I look back to 2022 when I did a similar deputation, there was 4,300. So we've lost 994 in the last 3 years. It's important to recognise the wider...
Can you bring your comments to a close? Thank you.
It's important to note the wider planning context. Portsmouth only has a 2.5-year housing supply, which engages a presumption in favour of sustainable development. Interestingly, this property was prior to conversion 137 square metres. The last 7-bed was only 88 square metres that we did. So it's significantly around 155% bigger. It's a very large house. Thank you very much for listening to my deputation.
Thank you for your deputation. Next deputation I have on the list is Councillor Jason Fazakerley. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you. And also congratulations there to Sarah for the way she gave her deputation. Very concise as the points that you made. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? We've just sat through a debate about money fields where you as a committee gave unanimous support to residents that are clearly suffering from parking issues. And some of the grounds for disagreement with this application, the first one I'll touch on is parking. Now, I've been down to North End Avenue several times over the last few months with residents and with traffic officers, specifically look at the problems they've got with parking. Now, that's an ongoing situation for me. I have pledged to do an informal resident survey after the local elections, but they have got a problem with parking. What we're looking at as this application is a 9-bedroom property. The report makes fairly light reference to the fact that under 8.29 that there potentially could be the individuals, 9 individuals could own separate vehicles. So we would see potentially an introduction of 9 additional vehicles in a road that already struggles with parking. Now, I've seen previous HMOs, I'm sure most of us as councillors have. I've seen some where they said, oh, it should be 1.5 parking spaces to an HMO, and then consequently the HMO comes in and you have 4 vehicles that have then spring up at the site. These aren't NIMBY comments from residents. I've had female residents say to me, we can't park at night, as you heard happens in Copner and Baffins. We're frightened to walk home in the dark. These are real concerns that residents are raising, as indeed as Sarah detailed. 8.13 report refers to a case where we lost on appeal to the Planning Inspectorate on an issue of parking because we didn't give evidence to back it up. Well, I'm quite happy for the emails that I've got, the texts that I've still retained from residents, to be passed on to our planning officers to give such evidence of residents' concerns and experiences if you are supportive to reject this scheme, and we've got evidence that we can give to them. 8.24 it's kind of bland dismissal, really, of words that say the occupation of up to 9 persons, unrelated persons, is unlikely to have any different impact than a large family. How many times, members, have we heard this and been told this? As a local councillor, I've received contact from residents of various properties to say that when an HMO has come into being, surprise, surprise, we get problems relating to it. These aren't made up. We don't come here and waste our time on speculation trying to wreck people's planning applications. But the fact is, as residents, as councillors, we see that the negative impact that some of these HMOs have. The inclusion reports on HMOs, when they mention, oh, there could be a particular problem in there, they seem to be shallow words. When we give our experiences, it seems as if, you know, they mean nothing. They're almost empty words in a report about the impact that it can have on people's lives. Why do we keep having so many come into these committees? Why are so many of them opposed? It's pretty clear why they're opposed, because of the impact that we have. This one here you've heard. Sarah's an immediate resident next door to it. You know, she's detailed the concerns that she's got, the experience she's been through it. I totally endorse what she said, because I've seen this experience in other areas too. We've got 3 ward councillors that have objected to this. Perhaps a rare show of unity, particularly during an election period. But again, if you have residents in your own wards where you've got this situation, that's why you're doing it. You're sticking up for the residents. I strongly urge you, members, reject this application. There is evidence to present to support the reasons for doing so. You've got detailed information given to you. I hope that you'll see, I hope you'll recognise, particularly as you've just given concern to what happens in money fields, we have got grounds to reject it, and I hope you do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your deputation. The last deputation, because Councillor Hunt was on here erroneously, as we established it at the beginning, so it's Councillor Richard Adair.
Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, this panel is being asked to deliberate over yet another HMO in the Gladys Avenue Triangle. As one of the local councillors, I've called on many residents and had numerous doorstep conversations over the perceived relentless spread of HMOs. I've recently noticed a distinct change of attitude. Initially, people were frustrated by the number of HMOs, and as that number increases, their attitude is turning to anger. I'm frequently asked, what can I do to stop these HMOs? I am told that no matter what objections are put forward, and no matter how many signed petitions, their voices are simply not heard, and the HMO is given permission. Residents feel powerless, and this cannot be a satisfactory state of affairs. I'm told that whenever a house goes up on the market in this area, residents wait with trepidation to see if a green notice is cable tied to a nearby lamppost. I have no idea of the validity of this claim, but I'm often told that the presence of an HMO, either next door or close by, greatly reduces the value of houses in the vicinity. So many objections are raised, but one which is frequently mentioned is the loss of another family home. Houses in this area are substantial and make impressive family dwellings. In the process of becoming an HMO, houses are treated like Halloween pumpkins, with the inside scraped out and replaced with stud wall partitions. I see that under permitted development, this has already happened to number 77. I also wish to pay tribute to Sarah. I've spoken to her quite a few occasions. I know it's not easy to come to a committee like this and to publicly speak, but I think we can all agree that Sarah spoke from the heart. She's given what she feels is her genuine and well-felt concerns, and I think we should give them the weight they deserve. Focusing directly on this application, by any reckoning, this is a large development. To place 9 persons into a single dwelling is unacceptable intensification and can only serve to adversely affect the balance of the neighbourhood. Once again, parking is raised as a major issue, and I ask the panel to carefully consider this. Gladys Avenue is a major through road and a bus route. As it is not a wide road, the double yellow lines either side of many of the junctions extend far more than they do in other parts of the city to provide pulling in points. This greatly reduces the available parking spaces. Residents say that parking is horrendous at the best of time, and the possibility of upwards of 9 extra cars can only make the situation worse. I've listened to what Mr. Hill has already said, but I can only go on the plans that I was given in the documents. So I note that 3 of the rooms are exactly meet the room standard size, and the 4th is compliant by being over by 0.1 of a square metre. I feel that this application would be far more acceptable to the residents if the intended number of residents was reduced, thereby giving those residents greater living space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dare. Okay, that's the end of the deputations. So, members, questions? Councillor Madgwick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, going on from what was been said in the deputations in relation to room 1, 2 and 3, they're dead on the 10. So if we look at 1 and 2, can officers just clarify that the measurements on 1 and 2 count from the secondary entry door, because there seems to be 2, 3 door entries. And also on bedroom number 3, given the strange layout of the room, how was that square meterage calculated accurately to within a centimetre square?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yeah, we can confirm that we do, as the report says, we do double check all these measurements, and the measurements don't include the lobbies for rooms 1 and 2. In relation to 3, the advantage we have is with our systems, you can measure areas which are not typical or straightforward triangles, rectangles or squares, using our online CAD system so that we can measure an area fairly quickly to double check that's the 10 square metres.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Atwell.
I don't mean this to sound flippant, because it really isn't, because I don't like this scheme at all. Why are there so many doors? Is there any information about why so many of the rooms seem to have 2 doors?
We had a similar query as to why that was, and we asked the question of the agent, and they didn't respond to that particular point. Again, as long as the size of the bedrooms meets what we've adopted as guidance, then if there's an additional lobby, that wouldn't be a planning reason to refuse the application. It potentially is a fire safety issue, which will be teased out at the building reg stage.
Can we see the, can't remember what it's called, the slicing through one version? So we've got another thing here, haven't we? I'm just trying to work out where the floor of the top floor relates to any windows or anything on. We haven't got one of those situations that we've had before where you can just about see the floor of the upper floor from the windows.
Yeah, so this is one of the issues that we queried in terms of the accuracy of the plans before taking it to members. So you probably can't quite read that notation there, but in effect what that's saying is the second floor is finishing short of the front wall. So then in effect there's a void, and it's set back behind the windows, and so there's no change to that external appearance in terms of the proposed elevations. So that floor plate will sit behind that window, sort of approximately in about that position, Chair.
So for the person occupying the room, there is a step down in front of the window and then the floor of the room above. So their ceiling is kind of like on, there's like a step down and then there's their ceiling in order to squeeze in the extra floor above.
In effect, it's at 2 levels within that room. It's mostly all at 1 level, and then there's a short part which is a void in front of the existing front elevation.
Any other questions, members? Question?
I do beg your pardon, gentlemen, but are we absolutely certain that this form of development in the reconfiguration of the inside is permitted development? Are we absolutely, and before you are, yeah, and I know you're going to give us the best advice, you've got the right advice, but, and is this happening elsewhere, to your knowledge?
Yes, so as a very basic point, internal alterations to a building which isn't listed, we were discussing a listed building earlier, but internal alterations to a building that isn't listed aren't development, so they're not a form of development we have any form of control over. So there's 2 aspects. They do, the proposal involves extensions to the building which are permitted development, so they're a permission given by the central government, but also even if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have control over the internal alterations for an unlisted building. They're simply not an act of development that the planning system controls.
And then following that, and I know we talked about this last time, but Mrs. Walsh wasn't here, but we had an example, for example, which we drew to your attention in Cardiff Road, and some enforcement has gone on there by the look of it. I'm grateful for that. But when you can see in through the glass from the street, my argument was last time that it has an adverse impact on the street scene. It looks bizarre, it looks wrong. Are we still not allowed to make an amendment on the grounds that it has an adverse impact on the visual amenities of the street scene and changes the character of the street?
the short answer is no, because the planning application is simply for the change of use of the property. So that's the only, the use of the property is what needs planning permission, because it goes from a C3 dwelling house to a sui generis HMO. So the short answer is no, because what they're doing is not an active development. The fact that you can see something through the windows, you may see something through the windows like blinds, like something in the room. Yes, you potentially may be able to see the structure of that floor, but it's not an active development, so it's not something that the planning system controls.
If I may, are you aware that the government, are they aware of this, or did they, no, I presume?
I mean, there would be a huge difficulty in bringing internal alterations to unlisted buildings within the control of, because that would mean the huge scope of, if you just wanted to take out a partition wall, whilst you might currently need building regs, if you bring that into planning applications, you vastly increase the amount of work that the planning system needs to do as well, if those internal alterations also needed planning permission as well. So there's a sound reason why the planning system hasn't sought to control internal alterations to a non-listed building, and that's always been the case, under my understanding, since the planning system has been in existence.
Arising out of that. And Chair, perhaps you and the officers just confirmed that actually from the 30th of September, these applications will not be even capable of being debated like this with the scrutiny that the committee puts on it, because under the national scheme of delegation, the government's decided that unelected, and bless them, unelected planning officers will be making these decisions. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, that 100% of HMOs would not come to this meeting.
So this kind of scrutiny that we're doing today will never happen again.
So on that note, are there any more questions? There are two more questions. Councillor Mason was slightly before you, Councillor Atwell.
Mr. Hill, in his deputation, mentioned the higher grade of insulation which is required because it's a 9-bedroom property. Does this insulation have any effect upon the area of the rooms which are only just compliant?
It's unlikely to, because but it would be a technical matter to be dealt with by building control. Even if it made a fractional change to the size of the rooms, our advice would still be that the scheme was compliant, and we would not win an appeal on the basis of a tiny technical failure against any room sizes. But it's a matter that would be dealt with at the building reg stage.
And I suppose a comment following my colleague, the regulations for the 30th of September have not yet been laid. It is the government's intention to lay them.
Good clarification, Councillor Mason. Councillor Atwell.
I mean, parking, quite understandably, has come up. Can officers, just so we're all aware, confirm that in planning terms, this development, there is no parking shortfall in terms of planning considerations?
Yeah, so in the report, so that is 828. The parking standards for both the existing and proposed uses are the same under our policies, and we've highlighted the difficulties that we've had in defending reasons for refusal based on parking grounds recently.
Okay, is that it for questions? Any comments? Councillor Madgwick, then Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Atwell. Councillor Madgwick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, look, we can see with our own eyes what this is. It's a complete overdevelopment. It's appalling, actually. It really is appalling. This is like a permanent change to a family home. It's terrible. You know, this is just maximising revenue for greedy landlords in its shell. You could have probably done a 6 or 7 bedroom HMO here and it been acceptable with decent room sizes, with a decent standard of living, like we've seen before from other HMO landlords who are more responsible, who offer a good standard of living. This is not. This is cramming chickens into cages, essentially. You know, a number of the rooms are within, well, are on the line. I argue specifically that room 3 is not livable. I mean, my dear Lord. I mean, it's 10 square metres on the dot, but I don't even know where you're putting a bed and can walk around in that space. It's not a good example. I also find it very strange about the doors. 30 doors in a house is a lot of doors in a singular house. I just counted them there just for interest. Yeah, 30 doors it seems like a crazy number. I mean, hopefully they're fire safe doors and it's the most fire safe house in the world. But this is a prime example of an overdevelopment. Probably the worst example I've seen, to be frank. And I think as councillors, we shouldn't be supporting these type of things. I understand that they technically meet certain technical thresholds, but sometimes I think these type of things are worth spending a couple of £1,000s on in a court case, because it's just, we've got to send a message that this just isn't acceptable. It really, really isn't. So I would not a God's given chance will I be voting to approve this today, and we'll see how it goes.
So that's not a proposal?
It's not a proposal at this stage, no.
We'd need,
not a proposal at this stage, but we'll see how the rest of these comments go.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Hunt was next.
Well, I'm afraid it is an overdevelopment of a bit of land, you know. It's not what the house was built for. And we see that because a new floor is being put in, and I think that it's a reasonably new phenomena that we've been seeing over the last 6 months, and it's come about after we've been submitting the local plan. So I think that as a council, subsequently, we need to look at this and see if there is anything that we can do in order to stop this. And this happens so often, you know, we come up with a plan and we come up with policies and rules, and then our developers circumnavigate them, as they did with intensification of HMOs subsequently to what we call the super HMOs. So we address that, and so it goes on. It's a bit of a battle, really. But Mr. Hill does give some, not hope, but he tells us about the reduction in numbers of HMOs. And it is true that some of them, and I've been doing this a long time now, they used to be really, really crummy, very bad places to live. And with these larger HMOs now, the standards for the intended occupiers have improved. But the impact on neighbours has got worse because they are so huge, and they bring a lot more people living into an already crowded area. On the parking, Councillor Dare and I think Councillor Fazackley both talked about how difficult the parking is there, but it's difficult in Baffins, as we heard earlier on. So that is a very difficult issue. Whether I like it or not, we have gone off to appeal. I heard what Councillor Magic said. We have gone off to appeal so many times on these sorts of issues, and Councillor Magic feels it's appropriate to spend public taxpayers' money, but we all know that that money will be wasted. You know, some of us might argue that it's not wasted by sticking up for residents. I completely agree. But the money is always, the costs are always awarded against us. It is an overdevelopment. There will be extra parking associated with this. It is an unfriendly application in an established residential area. And as I think Councillor Adair said before, people are actually moving out of areas because of these sorts of developments. But of course the government's got housing targets, and this does form part of his housing targets, especially as so few homes are being built nationwide. Although here in Portsmouth we are building homes. But that's it for the time being.
Councillor Atwell, and then I'm going to come in.
I just think it's probably worth reiterating to anyone who's paying attention or interested that, you know, the committee is not the final decision maker. I think often people think we are. And in fact, as we've just been hearing, in a very short amount of time, it's almost certain that we won't be part of the decision-making at all. Look, this is clearly an overdevelopment, and I'll wait to see what happens with the rest of the debate, but I don't think I can support it.
I don't think the debate's going to go in any other direction. So I think, so yes, exactly. So I do want to talk to some of the points that Councillor Madgwick and Councillor Hunt and Councillor Atwell have raised, because I have an consistency in voting for HMOs, because I take every single one of them one by one. Some I support and some I don't, but I'm always consistent in the fact that I have to find material planning reasons, and it makes me deeply unhappy that this seems to tick the boxes. It's, you know, on the one hand, as Councillor Hunt has said, I think we've seen an improvement in the overall quality of HMOs. But this is the worst of them all. This is a cram 'em in. Let's take away the outside space. Let's squeeze another room onto the back of it. And also the thing that really is most heartbreaking for me is ripping the guts out of really lovely, beautiful houses, which could one day, with a change of circumstance, be reverted to family homes, and shoving ceilings being visible from the road is just really sad, I think, for me, on a cultural level, if nothing else. And in actual fact, most reasonable people who are not against HMOs in principle, it's not the fact it's an HMO that is coming, it is this greed and over-intensification and cram 'em in, which is of no benefit to either the neighbours or the inhabitants who could be living there. I mean, I really hope that the internal insulation is really good, because you're going to be in bed with 2 showers next to you, you know, with a shower, and it's so overly intensified. I just wanted to get that off my chest, because with a very heavy heart, I'm going to be consistent that I can't find any planning reasons to not agree with the officer's recommendation. So I am going to reluctantly propose, with a plea to the developers, that if they do it again, they do it with a little bit more respect for the building and the neighbours. So there we go. I can't work out whether it was Councillor Mason or Councillor Hunt. Councillor Mason, I'll go to you next.
Yes, I also, with a somewhat heavy heart, will second that proposal. I don't like this. I don't think it's a good development for many reasons, but it meets all of our planning requirements. If we are going to be consistent as a council, we must say that if it meets our planning requirements, we approve it. If it doesn't meet our planning requirements, even by a centimetre, we will refuse it. We must be consistent one way or the other. So I will second the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, I'm going to propose to refuse it on the grounds of overdevelopment, the configuration of the property inside, for the intended residential occupiers, will create noise and disturbance to the neighbours by their coming and going, and as you say, showers and so on, and cramming people into rooms which are too small, so it's inappropriate for the intended residential occupiers as well. So having regard to all the material planning considerations and representations, I have concluded that the proposed change of use is not acceptable due to overdevelopment of the land, cramming people into small rooms, and poor configuration of the internal layout, and disturbance caused to neighbours by the coming and going. I would like to put parking into. However, I know that will only attract the scorn of a planning inspector, but as Councillor Madgwick says, maybe it's worth it. So yes, increased pressure on on-street parking.
Thank you. Councillor Madgwick. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Councillor. I think it was a... Okay. Was that what you were going to say?
But well, yeah, I was happily going to second it, of course, and I'm glad that Councillor Hunt did this. I agree. The proposed change of use in the dwelling house from a 9-bedroom sui generis represents a significant intensification of occupation. It truly is dreadful. It's the worst example I've seen, to be fair.
Not the worst I've seen.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's really terrible. By reason of scale of occupation, the relationship with neighbouring residential properties, the likely increase in noise disturbances, refuse activity, the use of external areas and general comings and goings, the absence of sufficiently robust refuse collection, recycling and cycle storing arrangements for 9 occupiers, as well as the parking conditions. But as I say, there's not even appropriate cycle storage for those. The proposal would amount absolutely to an over-intensive use of the site and would cause unacceptable harm to neighbouring residential amenities and the character of the area. So therefore, yeah, I'm happy to second Councillor Hunt's proposal to refuse, contrary to the policies of the PCS 20, PCS 2.3 of the Portsmouth Plan, and the House and Multiple Occupancy Supplementary Planning Document. Thank you.
Are you happy for Councillor Madwick to second? Any other comments? So we've got 2 proposals in front of us. The first one proposed by me, seconded by Councillor Mason, to reluctantly approve officer's recommendation for conditional permission for the change of use. All those in favour? 4. All those against? 4. Abstentions? None. Can't be abstentions, so therefore that is carried. I have to do it, won't I? Because I proposed it. So unfortunately, that's just the nature of the situation. So that will be, planning permission is granted. Do we have to go to the next one? We don't, because it, no. Okay. So that brings us to the end of that agenda item, which also brings us to the end of the meeting. This is the last meeting of this committee. So may see some of you, may not see some of you next municipal year. Is there any other? Oh, hang on, David's got. Oh, yes, there's a couple. There's another agenda item, which is an update, isn't it? Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just a couple of items to update members on. Let me just find. So central government have now enacted. Here we are. Let's find things. A direction under the Town and Country Planning Act, which means that where a local planning authority intends to refuse planning permission for a scheme that is 150 dwellings or more, it must refer the application to the Secretary of State, and then the Secretary of State will have 21 days whether to decide whether to use their powers to call in that application to be determined by the Secretary of State. That will apply to applications.
Sorry, David, did you have some slides on this or not?
No,
no,
not in relation to the legislation, no. No, I was going to pick up the appeals update in a second. But yes, so this direction will apply to applications which have not been determined by local planning authority before the 11th of May 2026. So from that date onwards, this direction will apply, and if the council were minded to refuse an application with 150 dwellings or more, it would have to refer the matter to the Secretary of State. Thinking of applications that members of the committee may, a scenario where that may have applied, the most recent one I think would have been the St John's Hospital scheme. Yeah.
St James's.
St James, sorry, not St John's, St James. I get confused.
Hang on. David, have you finished?
In relation to that?
Yeah, so questions from members.
Does that apply regardless of what local plan has been approved? I mean, could I apply for 500 houses in the middle of the Lake District and get away with it?
The it's about whether the council is intended to refuse the scheme. So, yes, there's no qualifications in terms of whether it's contrary to the local plan or not. It's simply about whether the intention is to refuse the scheme for the number of units.
Could I apply for an application on the common then? We were going to refuse?
Indeed, yes.
And it would waste government time going through it?
We presume that were you to propose a scheme that was clearly contrary to policy, that despite the referral side of the process, the Secretary would have regard to the local plan and in their decision about whether to call in the application or not.
It was a great April Fool showing a picture of developments around the on the common. This is like a nightmare coming true. I just place on record that I found this completely ridiculous.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
I'm glad Councillor Smythe agrees with us that the Labour government's housing approach is a total shambles and ridiculous. Can I just ask then, so in due course, will the number 150 actually come to a planning committee, do you think? Or will the government be deciding that, once again, planning officers will be determining these things?
So no, because of the size of that as a major application, that's not caught by the automatic scale of national scheme of delegation. So that would be of a scale in which we would still typically expect the planning committee to determine the application. What the direction does is means that the ability to refuse it doesn't exist unless it's been referred to the Secretary of State first.
And I'm so sorry, because things are changing so much. What is the number that, before the committee is excluded from determining? Is it 40 or something?
No. So under the regulations haven't been made yet, but there's still a proposal, and it would be major schemes would not be caught by that. So 10 units and above will still potentially come to the planning committee. They'll not automatically come to the planning committee, but they potentially will. But smaller than that would automatically be delegated.
Okay. You had another item. We seem to have lost some of the committee.
That's all right. Yes, this would be a brief appeal update because it's actually a decision that was made by the planning committee themselves. Apologies, let's just get that. I haven't put it into the slideshow mode. So, yes, members may recall, I think it was before your time, Chair, on the committee, but members may recall this scheme at 207 to 217 Copner Road. So it's a former buildings, the buildings merchant site at the crossroads of Subington Avenue. So it was a proposal to redevelop the site for a scheme of up to 5 stories with 25 residential dwellings in there. So the appeal has been dismissed. We'll get into the reasons of that because it was dismissed effectively on a technicality, but just so members may remember the site, this is the traffic lights here, and the site is just on the side here. It's a builder's yard, and the proposal was to entirely redevelop the site, so we would have we'd lay out here a block of flats. You'll see in the CGI in a second, stepping up at the corner with a rear parking area shown here. So this was the scheme, and officers recommended for approval. The application was refused, and there were three reasons for refusal. So the first was about scale and mass and its impact on the street scene. The second was there was an under-provision of car parking and the impacts of that on the car parking in the surrounding area, and then the standard issues about habitats mitigation for bird aware and nutrient neutrality. So just in terms of what the inspector concluded, on character and appearance, they were conscious of the poor quality of the existing site, and they were happy to see that replaced with a contemporary residential building, which they felt would have been higher quality in the street scene. In terms of the height, being up at 5 stories, they felt that was a focal point at a major intersection and would represent a good design and would also be consistent with the larger scale of development that you'd see along the Copner Road, but also with the stepping down of the building, that there would be a transition to those lower terraces in the adjoining roads. And therefore, they felt there was no conflict on the design policy, PACS 23. In terms of parking and the amenity issues, so overall the scheme had a shortfall of 23 spaces against the standard. Noted that parking pressure is an established feature in the area. Again, as we see quite consistently from the inspectorate, they concluded the site's in an accessible location with transport links and facilities in walking and cycling distance. But in this case, they were also conscious of the fallback. Because obviously the builder's yard was unrestricted in terms of the amount of HGVs and traffic movements that would occur. So they didn't support the reason for parking and amenity. So the appeal was dismissed, even though the applicant completed a suitable agreement for the mitigation, and we clarified for the inspector that it was an acceptable agreement because it met the standards. They accepted the bird aware mitigation, but questioned the nutrient neutrality mitigation. This seems to have come about actually from an error that the applicant did initially when they completed the information incorrectly, and they came up with a much higher figure because they didn't fill in the form correctly. We clarified this for inspector, but in their wisdom they didn't accept the advice we gave them that it did comply with the nutrient neutrality, and in addition they were concerned that the agreement didn't name where the credits would come from, although that's deliberate on our part because it's not we don't want to create a monopoly for credits for nutrient neutrality. There are options to secure those in various different places. So our intention is to write to query with PINS that we think they've made an error in that regard, principally so that they don't make that error again when they're dealing with our established policies for dealing with bird aware and nutrient neutrality. So it was dismissed on a technicality, but we're a bit concerned that for once the planning inspector's actually made a mistake in this regard. So I hope that's useful, Chair.
Very interesting. And interesting about the parking not being enough when it's 23 spaces. Okay. Thank you to the remaining committee. Yeah, just to say again, thank you very much for the last year. See you on the other side after the elections, and we'll see who's on the committee.